Chapter 600. Tsing Hui, Sword Saint Ji Xian, and the others had fled in the direction of the Fogbo Sword sect. They were not far from the Fogbo Sword sect now. With Sword Saint Ji Xian personally leading the way, the group arrived outside the Fogbo Sword sect before long. As soon as they arrived at the Fogbo Sword sect, countless rainbow-colored streaks of light whistled out from the sect at the same time. They seemed to form a rainbow bridge that extended out of the sect and arrived outside the sect where Tsing Hui and the others were. Every single streak of light was formed from flying swords that were at least Class 6. At a glance, there were no less than 100,000 of them. Every single flying sword gave off a different streak of light. They competed with each other in terms of brilliance, dyeing the entire space with a myriad of colors. It dazzled all the cultivators in the sect. This is the 10,000 Sword Rainbow Bridge. It's one of the most advanced ways of welcoming guests in our Fogbo Sword sect, the 10,000 Sword Rainbow Bridge. What guests have come to our Fogbo Sword sect? Why didn't I hear anything about it beforehand? A gold core realm old man not far from the mountain gate of the Rainbow Sword sect was muttering to himself as he looked at the 7-colored rainbow bridge that was completely extended from the flying sword with a gaze full of astonishment. The last time our Fogbo Sword sect used the 10,000 Sword Rainbow Bridge was 24 years ago, right? I remember that the sect master of the Annihilation sect personally led the upper echelon of the sect to visit our Fogbo Sword sect to discuss cooperation? That's right. It wasn't just that time. 49 years ago, we used the 10,000 Sword Rainbow Bridge because an invincible sainthood expert was invited to our sect. Only then did our Fogbo Sword sect use the 10,000 Sword Rainbow Bridge to welcome him. Just who has come this time? I didn't hear anyone mention it beforehand. Could it be related to when the Rainbow Sword Master left the sect not long ago? Other than the Golden Core Realm Elder, the many disciples, deacons, and elders of the Rainbow Sword sect were also extremely surprised. All of them raised their heads and looked towards the end of the myriad Sword Rainbow Bridge at the same time. Very quickly, they saw the 4 figures that were stepping on the myriad Sword Rainbow Bridge. It's Sword Saint Ji Xian, one of the 9 legendary sword saints of our Fogbo Sword sect. The ones walking with Sword Saint Ji Xian are Sword Saint Flying Fish and Sword Saint Long Xiao. These sword saints are all old men among us, so we naturally recognize them. But who is that person beside him? He looks so young. Sword Saint Ji Xian, Sword Saint Flying Fish, and Sword Saint Long Xiao are obviously led by that young man. My God, could it be that the higher-ups of our Rainbow Sword sect have utilized the myriad Sword Rainbow Bridge this time to welcome this esteemed guest? Accompanied by all sorts of cries of surprise, almost everyone's gazes landed on Tsing Hui, Sword Saint Ji Xian, and the others who had stepped onto the 10,000 Swords Bridge and were being carried into the Rainbow Sword sect. In reality, it was not just the disciples, deacons, and elders. Even Sword Saint Ji Xian, Sword Saint Flying Fish, and Sword Saint Xiao Long, who were standing on the 10,000 Sword Rainbow Bridge, were rather surprised when they saw that the sect had actually set up the 10,000 Sword Rainbow Bridge to welcome Tsing Hui. Clearly, they had not received the news beforehand. However, when they thought of the shocking power that Tsing Hui had displayed during the fight with Suffering Real God, although he was only an almighty then, if he were to grow, his achievements would definitely not be below Suffering Real God, who was an invincible giant in Divine Realm. If he were to step into Divine Realm one day and consolidate Realm, even Suffering Real God and the others would definitely find it hard to be his match. With the vast power of the Supreme Divine Power, it would not be an extravagant hope for him to rush into the ranking list of the top 10 strongest experts. To welcome such a top expert with a bright future, it was completely reasonable for the sect to utilize the 10,000 Sword Rainbow Bridge, one of the highest ceremonies. Under the lead of the 10,000 Sword Rainbow Bridge, the group of people quickly crossed the outer area of the Rainbow Sword sect and headed straight for the core mountain peak of the Rainbow Sword sect. Standing on the 10,000 Sword Rainbow Bridge, Tsing Hui looked down from a high vantage point. He could clearly see the mountains and rivers of the Rainbow Sword sect that spanned over 1,000 kilometers. In the mountains and rivers that spanned over 1,000 kilometers, there were countless palaces and lofts that adorned the lush mountains and forests. From time to time, in some of the mountains and forests, There were sword lights that soared into the sky, reflecting the brilliance of the supreme formation that enveloped the Rainbow Sword sect. In the middle of the mountains and rivers, there was a lofty mountain that rose from the ground. It was like a peerless divine weapon that pointed to the sky, giving off a vast and majestic sword essence. Although the sword essence, in terms of strength, was unable to cause much of an impact on Tsing Hui, the ancient and vicissitudes of life that was contained within the sword essence spread out. It was as though one was in ancient times, narrating the glory and brilliance of the divine wilderness back then. Rainbow Sword Sect. It is indeed the top force in Infinite Wasteland. Such a scene is not something that any other force can compare to. Tsing Hui said from the bottom of his heart. He had seen many mountain sect buildings, and the more powerful ones were the Arcane Art Sect and the Hidden Sword Sect, which had several powerful experts. He had even personally visited the Heaven Vault Sect's base in Infinite Wasteland World. However, compared to the Rainbow Sword Sect, these sects were all one level lower. Only a mountain sect like the Rainbow Sword Sect could truly be called a holy land for cultivation. It could truly be called a long history, and could truly be called an ancient sect. The orthodoxy of our Rainbow Sword Sect can be traced back to the ancient divine wilderness, and we obtain the inheritance of the blazing sun sword way. However, due to the great battle that shattered the divine wilderness, the world was in turmoil, and the true inheritor of the blazing sun sword way fell. We only inherited a part of the blazing sun sword way, so we were born out of the blazing sun sword way. In addition, after 6,000 years of development, the sect has given birth to a divine being. In particular, not long ago, following the breakthrough of Sword Master Bai Heng, the three great sword masters of our Rainbow Sword sect have suppressed the world, and our imposing manor has reached its peak. Among the top 19 forces of Infinite Wasteland World, we are not considered weak. Sword Saint Ji Xian, who was beside Tsing Hui, introduced the Rainbow Sword sect with a hint of pride when he saw that Tsing Hui was constantly sizing up the Rainbow Sword sect. Tsing Hui nodded. Not every top force had 3 supreme giants of the divine realm. For example, among the 1 hall, the 3 sects, the 6 schools, and the 9 sects, the weakest, Pan's Gate, and Nature's sect, only had 1 supreme giant of the divine realm. In addition, the Wind and Thunder sect, the 5 Elements sect, the Universal sect, and the other forces only had 2 supreme giants of the divine realm. Although these forces were top forces, they usually kept a low profile in Infinite Wasteland World. It was precisely because of this that the more active forces in Infinite Wasteland World were the Great Wilderness sect, the Black Flame sect, the Soul sect, the Glorious Era sect, the Divine Ghost sect, the 6 Sacred sects, the Annihilation sect, the Divine Path sect, and other forces. Even the 4 Stars Palace, which had an extremely ancient heritage, was not as active as these sects in Infinite Wasteland World, and even the entire Divine Wilderness World. Lord Pak Hui. As the 1,000-sword Rainbow Bridge extended into the depths of the Rainbow Sword sect, there were already 3 men and 3 women waiting at the end of the 1,000-sword Rainbow Bridge, on the main peak of the Rainbow Sword sect. Among the 6 people, 2 of them were at the embodiment of heaven and earth realm, while the remaining 4 were all mighty figures. They were revered as sword sages in the Rainbow Sword sect. Sect Master Fuyin. Tsing Hui was slightly surprised to see the person leading the group. This was because the middle-aged woman, who looked to be in her 30s and was dressed rather luxuriously, was the current sect master of the Rainbow Sword sect, Fuyin Sword Sage. Although the sect master position of the Rainbow Sword sect was very strange, and the 9 legendary sword sages were chosen through an election system, allowing anyone to be the sect master, this Fuyin Sword Sage had been the sect master for 4 consecutive periods of 400 years. Now, it was the 383rd year since she became the sect master. Her greatest achievement was to unearth Sword Master Bai Heng, who had been taken in as a disciple by a Golden Core elder back then. Now, he was leading the Rainbow Sword sect to the peak of prosperity. In certain aspects, she could be considered half a master to Sword Master Bai Heng. Lord Pak Hui, your presence in our Rainbow Sword sect brings light to our humble dwelling. Sword Master Long Rainbow is already waiting in the courtyard. Lord, please come with us. Fuyin Sword Sage said with a smile. Tsing Hui nodded and followed Fuyin Sword Sage to the inner courtyard. As for Fuyin Sword Sage's title of Lord, Tsing Hui didn't reject it. Every sect had a unique title for the core members of their force. Although Sky Dome sect hadn't been established for long, they didn't pay too much attention to it. However, they used the law phenomenon of heaven and earth as a standard to establish the title of Lord. Any Sky Dome sect member who possessed the law phenomenon of heaven and earth or the fighting power of the law phenomenon of heaven and earth could be honored as Lord, such as Zhangzhen, San Miao, Yuanri, and so on. At that moment, Tsing Hui was able to fight evenly with real God Suffering and not be defeated. Moreover, he had forced real God Suffering to burn his realm origin. This was enough to prove his power. The title of Lord lived up to his name. When they arrived at Sword Master Long Rainbow's courtyard, Fuyin Sword Sage introduced the other 5 people next to her. The 5 of them were all important figures in White Rainbow Sword Sect. Among them was the 3rd Sword Master of White Rainbow Sword Sect, Sword Master Peng Guang's first lineal disciple, Sword Master Qi Peng. It should be known that Sword Master Peng Guang was the Sword Master with the highest seniority in White Rainbow Sword Sect. He had a high reputation in White Rainbow Sword Sect. Even Sword Master Long Rainbow was 2 generations lower than him in terms of seniority, let alone Sword Master Bai Heng. In terms of seniority, Sword Master Long Rainbow had to address his disciple as Martial Uncle. Fortunately, Sword Master's identity was higher than Sword Master's. Normally, only Sword Masters would greet Sword Masters and no Sword Masters would greet Sword Masters. The reason why many sects had such titles was probably to solve the problem of seniority. Under Fuyin Sword Sage's lead, the group arrived at Sword Master Long Rainbow's courtyard very quickly. In the courtyard, Sword Master Long Rainbow took the initiative to stand up. He smiled at Tsing Hui and gestured, "Lord Pak Hui, you're here. Please take a seat." Such a reaction showed that he was on equal footing with Jian Wushuang. Fuyin Sword Sage and the others didn't understand why Sword Master Long Rainbow was so polite to Tsing Hui, and they were surprised. Tsing Hui didn't treat him as an outsider. He nodded his head and sat down. "Thank you for inviting me, Sword Master Long Rainbow. Also, I would like to thank Sword Master Long Rainbow for his help just now. In actual fact, even if you didn't need my help, real God Suffering wouldn't be able to do anything to you. If you wanted to leave, real God Suffering wouldn't be able to stop you." As Sword Master Long Rainbow spoke, he thought of real God Suffering's miserable state when he was chasing after him. He looked at Tsing Hui in disbelief. After hesitating for a while, he couldn't help but ask, "From what I know, although Lord Pak Hui joined Heaven Dome, in actual fact, you didn't join any big sect in Infinite Region, right?" "That's true." Tsing Hui nodded. He could vaguely guess something. "Lord Pak Hui, what do you think of Bai Hong Sword Sect?" Bai Hong Sword Sect and Pak Hui are fated to meet. From what I know, back then, you had a deal with Shuaing to cultivate the Candle Sun scripture. Shuaing? Tsing Hui was slightly stunned. Sword Master Bai Heng? Sword Master Long Rainbow nodded his head slightly. Sword Master Bai Heng is just a nickname. My real name is Bai Shuaing. After that, he added, I really hope that Lord Pak Hui can consider joining Bai Hong Sword Sect. If Lord Pak Hui is willing to join Bai Hong Sword Sect is willing to treat you as an honorary sword master. We'll also activate Sword Essence of Long Rainbow for 30 days to help Lord Pak Hui comprehend. Chapter 601. The Rainbow Sword Master's words were sincere, and the conditions he offered were enough to move any cultivator of the Heaven Wasteland domain who knew the importance of a sword master. Even the masters of the Rainbow Sword Sect, the Ji Sound Sword Saint, the Red Rock Sword Saint, the Ji Xian Sword Saint, the Flying Fish Sword Saint, the Dragon Owl Sword Saint, and the others who came with Tsing Hui could not help but gasp. Although they had expected that the Rainbow Sword Master would value Tsing Hui greatly, they did not think that he would value him to this extent. Sword Master. That was the top existence in the entire Rainbow Sword Sect, and there were only 3 Sword Masters in the entire Rainbow Sword Sect. Even if an honorary Sword Master could not interfere with the decisions of the sect, The power they had was not inferior to that of a true sword master. Now that Xing Hui was an outsider, she was willing to treat him as a sword master upon his arrival. If this were to be known by outsiders, it would definitely cause countless people to go crazy. In addition, the rainbow sword was an ancient divine sword left behind from the divine wilderness era. This divine sword had been worn down by countless years, and its power could only be compared to a 15th-level divine weapon at best. However, there was an extremely powerful sword intent hidden within this divine sword. Comprehending this sword intent would not only allow one's comprehension of sword intent to advance by leaps and bounds, but it would also greatly temper one's soul, allowing one's soul to be tempered. Because the sword intent in the divine sword could not be nourished, it would weaken after being used. Everyone in the Rainbow Sword sect regarded it as a treasure and a month's time to comprehend it. Perhaps even the Uisound Sword Saint, who had worked loyally for the Rainbow Sword sect for 383 years, would not receive such treatment in the future. Rainbow Sword Master, why don't we discuss this matter with Sword Master Pengguang, Sword Master Bai Heng, and the other Sword Saints before making a decision? The Red Rock Sword Saint impatiently spoke before Xing Hui could reply. The other two powerful experts behind him did the same. However, the Sound Sword Saint and the other two Sword Saints seemed to be deep in thought. I have my own opinion on this matter, and I believe that Sword Master Bai Heng and Sword Master Pengguang will fully support my decision. As for the reason, it involves some secrets of Pak Hui, so I can't tell you. As the Rainbow Sword Master said that, he turned towards Qing Su and smiled. This so-called secret was in fact a supreme divine ability derived from Xing Hui. However, supreme divine abilities were rarely seen in tens of thousands of years heaven wasteland domain. If not for now, it was best to conceal it for as long as possible, to at least give Xing Hui enough time to grow. Sword Master. Alright, I've already made up my mind. There's no need to say anything more. The Rainbow Sword Master interrupted the Red Rock Sword Saint with a wave of his hand. At the same time, he frowned. He felt that the Red Rock Sword Saint was being a little rude just because he was older than him. However, he did not say anything. Instead, he turned to Xing Hui and said sincerely, Master Pak Hui, you can consider this carefully. In fact, our Rainbow Sword sect and Celestial sect are quite close. A few decades ago, Master Celestial sect of Celestial sect even paid a personal visit to our Rainbow Sword sect to discuss an alliance. At that time, due to various reasons, the alliance turned into cooperation, but over the years, our relationship has been quite close. I'm naturally aware of that. I've also come here to express my gratitude to the White Rainbow Sword sect. Thank you, Sword Master Bai Heng, for lending a hand and saving esteemed Zhu Zhao. Although our two forces have yet to form an alliance, we've been cooperating for a long time. Tian Xiong is in trouble, so it's only right that we lend a hand. The Rainbow Sword Master smiled. Besides, there's something that Master Pak Hui doesn't know. The sword wielder of Sky Dome is actually a member of our Rainbow Sword sect. She's the most outstanding sword saint of Rainbow Sword sect, the Mist Rue Sword Saint. Back then, because of the Sky Dome sword, she joined Sky Dome and became a sword wielder. However, she's still a member of our Rainbow Sword sect. Therefore, Master Pak Hui doesn't need to worry that joining our Rainbow Sword sect will affect your status in Sky Dome. I see. Xing Hui had always been curious about the Sky Dome swordsman. Only now did he truly understand the true identity of this Sky Dome swordsman. However, he was indeed tempted by Sword Master Long Rainbow's invitation. There were two ways for him to increase his strength. One was to cultivate a body tempering technique to increase the strength of his body. The other was to comprehend sword force as soon as possible. Compared to these 2 points, the nourishment of the Scarlet Abyss sword had already fallen to the 3rd level. The moment he made a breakthrough in his divine power, the Scarlet Abyss sword's reconstruction had already reached the 15th level. The limit that it could withstand had already risen to more than 20 swords, which was enough for a short period of time. However, nourishing it to the 16th level wasn't something that could be done overnight. In addition, he could also improve the Sword of Sunlight to reduce the burden on the Scarlet Abyss sword. This problem wasn't difficult to solve. He didn't even need to be in a hurry to temper his body before he mastered the 9 transformations of the true dragon. As for sword force, even after talking to Master Tianqiong, he still didn't have a clue. If he could borrow the Rainbow Sword Sect to cultivate, on one hand, he would have a deeper understanding of sword intent. On the other hand, it would allow him to refine his spirit. However, after joining the Rainbow Sword Sect and receiving benefits from it, he naturally had to bear the responsibility. Seeing that Xing Hui was still hesitating, the Rainbow Sword Sect's master finally decided to strike while the iron was hot. He said bluntly, "If Master Pak Hui is willing to join our Rainbow Sword Sect, then from today onwards, our Rainbow Sword Sect will have 2 people in Tianqiong. Our Rainbow Sword Sect won't refuse Tianqiong's request for an alliance. When the time comes, I can even personally discuss the matter of the alliance with Master Tianqiong." HM? Xing Hui looked at the Rainbow Sword Sect's master. Only the core members of Tianqiong knew that Master Zhenjiao was heavily injured and his life was hanging by a thread. Perhaps even Master Three Wonders, who hadn't gained Tianqiong's complete trust, didn't know how serious Master Zhenjiao's injuries were. However, paper couldn't contain fire. If Master Zhenjiao couldn't recover in 3 to 5 years and take charge of Tianqiong, then Tianqiong's current strength would be exposed. At that time, the Ghost God sect wouldn't be the only one who wanted to take advantage of Tianqiong. Perhaps all the bad guys would immediately rush over and try to bite off a piece of Tianqiong's flesh. Without enough power to maintain Tianqiong's stability, this sect, which had only been established for a little over 1,000 years and was far from comparable to other chaos organizations, would very likely collapse under internal and external threats. He was indebted to Master Zhangzhen and Master Zhenjiao, so he naturally didn't want to see this happen. If the Rainbow Sword Sect was truly willing to join this alliance, the alliance would be equivalent to having Tianqiong, the Rainbow Sword Sect, and the Shadow Sword Sect. This was a force that no one dared to ignore. Not only would it alleviate Tianqiong's current crisis, even if news of Master Zhenjiao's injuries were to spread in the future, Tianqiong would still be able to withstand the storm. When he thought of this, Xing Hui no longer hesitated. "It looks like I'm quite fated with the Rainbow Sword Sect. Since Rainbow Sword Sect's master thinks highly of me and invites me to join, it would be rather ungrateful of me to refuse. I'm willing to join the Rainbow Sword Sect and become their honorary sword master." "All right." Seeing that Xing Hui had finally agreed, Rainbow Sword Sect's master smiled from the bottom of his heart. "I'll make preparations and hold a banquet to announce this to the world." Seeing that Rainbow Sword Sect's master was about to settle this matter, Scarlet Rock Sword Sect's master couldn't help but interject, "Sword Sect's master, it's best if you discuss this matter with the other 2 sword masters. Also, if our Rainbow Sword Sect wants to have an honorary sword master, we can't be too shabby. We'll need to inform the sword saints in charge of the various departments of our sect before we make any preparations. Otherwise, we'll become a laughingstock." Rainbow Sword Sect's master calmly glanced at Scarlet Rock Sword Saint. "I'll take care of this myself. You don't need to worry about it." Then he turned to the Soothing Sound Sword Saint. "Since Pak Hui is the master of our Rainbow Sword Sect, she should be treated well. Clear out Frost Sword Peak and invite Pak Hui to stay there. Also, you'll need to take care of the servants. Don't neglect Pak Hui just because she's an honorary sword master." Soothing Sound Sword Saint lowered her head respectfully. "Don't worry, Rainbow Sword Sect's master. I'll take care of this properly." "I've always trusted you," Rainbow Sword Sect's master said. Then he turned to his emotions. "Sword Master Pak Hui just fought with true god suffering. You must be tired. I won't take up too much of your time. Go and rest. When the time comes, the 2 of us will pay a visit to Master Firmament to discuss the alliance." Although Xing Hui had a rank 10 recovery ability, the injuries caused by the battle with true god suffering couldn't be healed in a short period of time. He didn't refuse. "Thank you, Rainbow Sword Sect's master. I'll take my leave." "Ha! From today onwards, Rainbow Sword Sect will be your second home. I hope you'll be able to stay here more often." "I'll have the chance." Xing Hui smiled. Soothing Sound Sword Saint stood up and brought Xing Hui out of the mountain to make arrangements. Scarlet Rock Sword Saint wanted to persuade Rainbow Sword Sect's master again. However, Rainbow Sword Sect's master couldn't be bothered with him anymore. Scarlet Rock Sword Saint could only leave and find a way to contact his master, Sword Sect's master. In the end, only Soothing Sound Sword Saint and the rest were left to bring Tsing Hui to make arrangements for his residence. With the sect master's orders, Frost Sword Peak was quickly taken care of. It was obviously a peak prepared for top figures. Naturally, it had all the necessary facilities. Next, they just had to add things according to Tsing Hui's preferences. Sect Master Soothing Sound, don't you want to ask why Rainbow Sword Sect's master allowed Pak Hui, who's obviously only at the Transcendent Realm, to join our Rainbow Sword Sect? Moreover, he didn't hesitate to give her the treatment of an honorary Sword Sect's master? Although the honorary Sword Sect's master, other than not being able to participate in the sect's decisions, what rights does he not have? He's almost no different from a real Sword Sect's master. After Fuyin had arranged everything for Qing Su, one of the great beings who had always been in charge of assisting her asked curiously through a communication technique. Outsiders have always thought that I was the one who discovered Bai Heng's talent. However, there's something you don't know. The one who discovered Bai Heng's talent first was actually Rainbow Sword Sect's master. The Stroking Sound Sword Saint looked at her good friend and smiled, even though I don't know why the Rainbow Sword Master favors the White Ruin Sword Master so much, even more than the White Ruin Sword Master back then, since we can't figure it out. Why don't we trust her and do as she says? I believe that we'll get a satisfactory answer one day. Chapter 602. In the courtyard of Frost Sword Peak. The Floating Cloud Sword Saint was taken away by the Flying Fish Sword Saint, Ji Xian Sword Saint, and Long Shao Sword Saint for treatment. As for the revenge, it would be difficult for the Rainbow Sword Sect to intervene in the short term. After all, strictly speaking, it was the Floating Cloud Sword Saint who had attacked the Black Flame Sect first. The Black Flame Sect had only acted in self-defense. Moreover, the Hidden Sword Saint, who had a good relationship with the Floating Cloud Sword Saint, was not a member of the Rainbow Sword Sect. Even though Qing Su was now the honorary sword master of the Fogbow Sword Sect, the Fogbow Sword Sect would more or less support him if he wanted to declare war on the Black Flame Sect. However, Qing Su did not want to cause trouble for the Fogbow Sword Sect because of his own matters. After all, the Fogbow Sword Sect had their own enemies, which was the encroachment of the Divine Path Sect. Qing Su studied the Hidden Sword Venerable carefully. He sensed that the Hidden Sword Venerable had been tortured both mentally and physically, so his face could not help but darken slightly. Immediately, he used the Rainbow Sword Sect's channels to purchase many healing items, such as Primordial Spirit Chi, and gave them to the Hidden Sword Venerable. However, the Hidden Sword Venerable's spirit had been severely injured by a special method. Without a cure, it would take at least a few months for the Hidden Sword Venerable to wake up on his own. If the Hidden Sword Venerable's spirit wasn't strong enough, he might not wake up for a year or two. Black Flame Sect. Tsing Hui said slowly, and there was a flash of cold light in his eyes. He was considered the second Grand Elder in the Hidden Sword Sect. Hence, the Hidden Sword Saint's matter was his matter. Since the Black Flame Sect had hurt the Hidden Sword Saint, Tsing Hui would not let it go. If I'm not mistaken, Real God Suffering's real purpose of torturing the Hidden Sword Saint is not as simple as the Tao Vessel and Chaotic level. What he really wants is the Hidden Sword Saint's Extreme Sword Principle. Especially since I relied on the Extreme Sword Principle and the power of the Supreme Divine Powers to fight with Real God Suffering and almost defeated him. He must be more interested in the Extreme Sword Principle. In other words, when I'm confident, I can lure him out. Luring him out was one thing, defeating him was another, and capturing him alive to interrogate him for the incantation was a completely different matter. Tsing Hui closed his eyes. Perhaps he had to find a chance to visit the Black Flame Sect. This technique might not be unique to the suffering true God. Infiltrating the Black Flame Sect, on the one hand, was to see if he could find a way to remove this technique. On the other hand, since the Hidden Sword Venerable hadn't killed him yet, he would deal with him. But before that, he still had to cultivate the True Dragon's 9 transformations to the 9th transformation as soon as possible. With that thought in mind, Xing Hui's gaze could not help but fall on the true dragon 9 transformations. I have a strong body as a foundation, so it's not difficult for me to cultivate in the early stages. In addition, I used some Dao vessel to buy some universe treasure that can replenish my vital energy. It shouldn't take long for me to cultivate the true dragon's 9 transformations to the 6th and 7th transformation. As for the 8th and 9th transformation, I still have a lot of bloodstripe grass with me. These are treasures for cultivating the true dragon's 9 transformations. I only gave one to Shinchong, but I kept a few dozen for myself. With these bloodstripe grass, it should be more than enough to cultivate the true dragon's 9 transformations. Thinking of this, Xing Hui didn't waste any time and immediately started cultivating the true dragon's 9 transformations. As the true dragon's 9 transformations was considered a normal cultivation method, it wasn't very advanced. In addition, with Xing Hui's good foundation, he made rapid progress in cultivating it. In just 3 days, he had already cultivated the 3rd, 4th, and 5th transformations of the true dragon's 9 transformations. Due to his good foundation, cultivating the 5 transformations was not difficult at all. Moreover, as he completed the cultivation of the 5 transformations, he could clearly feel the changes in his body. Although the increase was not great, it was from the inside to the outside. Compared to the tempering of his body from the outside to the inside, the feeling was completely different. He already had the foundation of the real dragon's 5 transformations in the Green Hell realm, but as he completed the cultivation of the real dragon's 5 transformations, his strength still increased by almost 30%. Sure enough, the cultivation system of any world has its merits. Perhaps some systems can't allow one to climb to the peak of the cultivation path, but no one can deny that it shines in certain aspects. Xing Hui understood. 3 days later, the Rainbow Sword Master invited Xing Hui to her courtyard again. This time, other than the Rainbow Sword Master, there were 2 other Sword Masters in the courtyard. One of them was Sword Master Bai Heng, who had met Xing Hui twice and taught him how to use the Sun Glory Sword. The other was an old man with white hair who looked like an immortal. He was the oldest Sword Master in the Rainbow Sword sect, Sword Master Pengguang. Although Sword Master Pengguang did not cultivate the Xuanwu bloodline, he had collected and consumed many life-prolonging treasures. In addition, he was already over 4,000 years old and was still alive. Looking at his life force fluctuations, as long as he didn't go through an intense battle and damage his foundation, he should be able to live for another 100 or 200 years. Apart from the 3 Sword Masters, there were several powerful people standing to the side in the courtyard. When they saw Xing Hui arrive, they all bowed slightly to him. Even Sword Saint Chi Peng, who had been dissatisfied with Xing Hui becoming the honorary Sword Master, was no exception. However, there was still a trace of disbelief in his eyes. He just didn't dare to show it because he had some misgivings. Sword Master Pak Hui, you've come. This is Sword Master Pengguang. As for this one, Sword Master Bai Heng, I don't think you need me to introduce him too much. Sword Master Long Rainbow looked at Xing Hui and said with a smile. Xing Hui nodded and looked at Sword Master Bai Heng. Compared to before, Sword Master Bai Heng seemed to have shed the awe-inspiring and sacred aura that he usually exuded. He was still as quiet and clear as the stars, but there was a sense of intimacy that he had never had before in his cold aura. He looked at Xing Hui with a gaze that was no longer as calm and indifferent as before. Instead, there was a hint of curiosity as he studied him. Sword Master Pengguang, Sword Master Bai Heng. Xing Hui nodded slightly at the 2 of them. Sword Master Pak Hui. Sword Master Pengguang looked at Xing Hui. After cultivating for over 4,000 years, his temperament had completely surpassed that of ordinary juniors. However, when he looked at Xing Hui, he still seemed rather impatient. We've talked about you with Shuang in the past few days. It seems like you bought the Candlelight Scripture from Shuang over a decade ago? At that time, you were only in the awakening realm of the longevity realm? Xing Hui knew what Sword Master Pengguang wanted to ask. He looked at Sword Master Bai Heng, and Sword Master Bai Heng was also looking at him. They seemed to be trying to determine whether this man in front of them was the young man who had traded the Candlelight Scripture with her over a decade ago. Over a decade ago, I was indeed in the awakening realm. Xing Hui replied calmly. Hiss. Even though Sword Master Bai Heng had already told them the truth, Sword Master Pengguang and Sword Master Long Rainbow could not help but gasp at this moment. Over a decade, Xing Hui had actually used over a decade to cultivate to the magical realm. Furthermore, it was a supreme magical power derived from a perfected golden core sovereign. Based on this, they could infer that Xing Hui's inheritance was definitely earth-shattering. He might have dug out the cave dwelling of an expert who could create a world with a single thought. With the many resources left behind by the expert who could create a world with a single thought, he was able to experience the rise of a legend and reach the peak in one go. Unbelievable, unbelievable. If Her Excellency Pak Hui did not say it herself, and there was also Shuang to prove it, I would never believe that there is such a genius in the world. Sword Master Pengguang praised from the bottom of his heart. Sword Master Long Rainbow nodded his head in agreement. At this moment, he was glad that he had made the prompt decision to pull Xing Hui into Bai Hong Sword Sect. Xing Hui had only used over a decade to reach such a level. He had fought against real God Gu Nan without dying. If he were to be given another decade, or even a few decades, to reach such a level, what realm would he reach? As long as he stepped into the Saint stage, he would definitely have a place among the top 10 most powerful people in the Infinite Wasteland domain. Moreover, his ranking would be extremely high. At that time, the Rainbow Sword Sect's power would also rise because of him. Pak Hui, is your Sword of Sun Brightness perfected? When you defeated real God Suffering, did you use the Sword of Sun Brightness too? Sword Master Bai Heng asked from the side. However, the main point of her question was the improved sword principle that had left a deep impression on her. Although I have made many improvements to the Sword of the Sun during this period of time, making it much more stable than before, it is still a little lacking compared to the Sword of the Sun that I am satisfied with. Oh? In actual fact, during this period of time, I borrowed your understanding and thoughts of the Sword of Sun Brightness to improve the Sword of Sun Brightness. At the same time, I also improved the Sword of Sun Brightness. Why don't we try it out? Sword Master Bai Heng was eager to give it a try. Try it out? Xing Hui's eyes lit up. My pleasure. Sword Master Bai Heng was the #1 genius in Bai Hong Sword Sect. In the entire Divine region, no one dared to say that they were more talented than her. This could be seen from the fact that she was able to break through to the Divine Realm at such a young age. Moreover, she had taken a huge step forward in the Divine Realm to reach the realm of an expert. With her shocking talent and cultivation at the peak of the Divine Realm, Xing Hui was really looking forward to her Sword of Sun Brightness. There's no time to lose. Let's go to Sword Enlightenment Plane now. Sword Master Bai Heng was clearly very attentive to matters of cultivation. Otherwise, it was impossible for her to reach such a level at such a young age. She immediately stood up and was about to lead Xing Hui to Sword Enlightenment Plane. Sword Master Long Rainbow and Sword Master Pengguang saw this scene and had no choice but to temporarily stop the two. Shuang, this matter is not urgent. We have invited Pak Hui here for 2 reasons. On one hand, we want to meet the 4th Sword Master of our Bai Hong Sword Sect. On the other hand, we want to discuss the matter of the alliance with Tianxiong. Last time, Master Tianxiong personally came to our Bai Hong Sword Sect to pay a visit. This time, we should take the initiative to send someone. Since you are familiar with Pak Hui and have a friendship with Lan Rui, why don't you go to discuss the matter of the alliance with Tianxiong? Martial Granduncle Long Rainbow, my cultivation is not enough. I still need time to temper myself. Sword Master Pak Hui will definitely come forward to discuss the matter of the alliance with Tianxiong. After all, she is equivalent to the link between our Bai Hong Sword Sect and Tianxiong. Therefore, if Sword Master Pak Hui goes with you, won't you be able to study the Sword of Sun Brightness while traveling? This will naturally not delay your cultivation. Sword Master Bai Heng nodded slightly when he heard this. His starry eyes turned to Xing Hui. Sword Master Pak Hui, what do you think? The matter of the alliance between the 2 sects should be settled as soon as possible. Alright, let's set off now. Chapter 603. The wind was like rain. Sword Master Bai Heng's character was clearly rather swift and decisive. That day, the two did not even use flying artifacts, and directly flew into the sky on their swords. Due to the urgency of time, there was no need for the two forces to form an alliance. They only needed to wait for the matter of the alliance to be completely settled before announcing it to the world and intimidating everyone. Therefore, the two traveled lightly and did not bring any servants with them. Under such circumstances, flying on their swords was naturally extremely fast. I really didn't expect you to reach such a level in a dozen years. I'm afraid it won't be long before my title as the #1 genius of the divine wilderness will be taken away by you. Sword Master Bai Heng rode on his sword. He looked at Qing Su, who followed him closely and did not fall behind at all. He could not help but smile. Everyone has their own opportunities. Although my cultivation path was quite smooth in the early stages, no one can say for sure what the future will be like. That's different. What you cultivate is a supreme divine ability. When you step into the divine realm and cultivate a domain, you will receive an endless stream of domain power and will definitely be ranked among the top 10 experts. It's still too early to step into the divine realm. Moreover, perhaps by the time I reach the divine realm, you will have already stepped into the insightful void realm, or even the void-shattering realm before me. I heard Master Firmament mention that the cultivation of the domain realm involves the origin of the domain and requires a great amount of resources. However, from the domain realm to the insightful void realm, it depends on comprehension. Once you understand the void laws, you will naturally break through. The void-shattering realm after that is also the perfect combination of the laws and one's own strength. In this regard, you veteran divine realm experts have a great advantage over me. Xing Hui said sincerely. He was telling the truth. In fact, with the lack of resources in the divine wilderness, the invincible giants who could cultivate to the divine realm were all worthy of being called heaven's favored children 10,000 years ago. They were qualified to break through to the divine realm, and geniuses among geniuses like Sword Master Bai Heng and Master Zhu Zhao were even more likely to break through to the divine realm and ascend to the divine realm. Unfortunately, due to the limitation of resources, many top powerhouses were like tigers that had fallen from their lair. They could only rely on excavating the ancient cave abodes and the resources in the Chaos Treasure Pavilion to survive. Moreover, as the ancient cave dwellings were excavated one by one, or perhaps as time passed, the treasures inside would be eroded. In the future, many of the resources in the ancient cave dwellings could no longer be used. At that time, if he wanted to break through to the Saint Realm and complete his domain, the difficulty would be even more shocking. However, resources limited their cultivation realms. Once the problem of resources was completely solved in the divine wilderness, all the experts of the Saint Realm would definitely soar into the sky. Perhaps more than half of the experts of the Saint Realm would be able to step into the insightful emptiness realm within 10 years, and another half of them would be able to shatter the vacuum realm within 100 years. This could be seen from the Chaos Holy Man, the supreme god of ancient desolation, and the Tai Emperor who had obtained the inheritance of the ancient cave abode. Where there is a will, there is a way. For you to be able to achieve a divine power in more than 10 years, it shows how amazing your talent is. I believe that it won't be long before you have a place among the top 10 experts of the divine wilderness. I hope that day won't come too late. Xing Hui smiled. Since we are in a hurry to return to the Firmament Realm to discuss the alliance with the Firmament Master, and can't compete in the Sunburst Sword technique, how about we compete in flying speed? Flying speed? Xing Hui was a little surprised. I see that you seem to be effortlessly following me. Obviously, this is not your fastest speed. Then, let me see where your limit is. Since Sword Master Bai Heng is willing, then I will respectfully accept. Xing Hui smiled. Bai Heng is just my nickname. To the outside world, you are already the 4th Sword Master of the Bai Hong Sword sect. You can call me by my real name, Bai Shuang, or you can also call me Senior Sister Shuang. Sword Master Bai Heng smiled. Xing Hui was taken aback by Sword Master Bai Heng's sudden joking attitude. After a while, he said, "Then I will call you by your real name. My real name is Xing Hui." Pak Hui is just an alias in the Chaos Temple. I know that. Grandmaster Changhong has investigated you a little in the past few days. I apologize for that. Sing Hui shook his head. It would be strange if Sword Master Changhong did not investigate him. It's fine. Shall we begin now? Okay, let's begin. Ladies first. Sing Hui gestured with his hand. Sword Master Bai Shuang shook her head. Although female cultivators are rare in the cultivation world, in my opinion, female cultivators are not weaker than anyone else. Let's begin together. Okay then. After a breath's time, let's fly on our swords at the same time. Please. The two of them finished their discussion. In the next moment, the speed of their swords exploded. For a moment, two deafening roars exploded in the void at the same time. Accompanied by a terrifying sonic boom, the two beams of sword light tore through the void and headed straight for the vault of heaven. Qing Su did not use his ability to chase after light, nor did he use his flying sword, Sky Splitter. However, even with that being the case, his speed was still no slower than regular sainthood experts, and the sainthood experts in question referred to sainthood experts with 12th class flying swords. Flying swords were different from divine weapons. Flying swords were mainly driven by sword intent and supplemented by true essence. In other words, flying swords were nurtured by sword intent. If no one nurtured them with sword intent for a long period of time, they would drop in rank much faster than divine weapons. In the entire divine wilderness, there might be 16th order, 17th order, or even 18th order peerless divine weapons, but flying swords, 12th order represented a limit. The two of them flew at full speed without using any flying swords. Their speed was not inferior to that of a saint expert using a 12th order flying sword. Two streaks of sword light tore through the sky, and they could travel several dozen kilometers in a single breath. After flying for a while, Sing Hui was surprised to find that even without using Light Chaser, he could not gain any advantage over Bai Shuang. Even if he used all his strength, he still could not shake her off. On the other side, Bai Shuang was also rather surprised by the speed of Qing Su's sword, as if she had never thought that Qing Su would be so fast without a flying sword. Amazing! However, this is not my full speed. Next, I will use the power of my domain. You have to keep up. Bai Shuang looked at Sing Hui and smiled. In the next moment, the power of her domain swept out. The surrounding space seemed to be ignited by a terrifying heat. Under the amplification of this heat, her speed soared, leaving Sing Hui behind in an instant. As expected of an existence close to the level of a supreme expert. With this kind of flying speed, unless I use Light Chaser, I will not be able to catch up to her. It seems that I was a bit biased when I thought that my speed could surpass anyone below the insightful emptiness realm. Sing Hui's expression was slightly solemn. The techniques he had displayed could be said to be miraculous. Even the suffering true god had been forced to burn the origin of his domain. If he still had the backtrack technique, he would definitely have been able to beat the suffering true god into using a teleportation technique to escape. However, it was undeniable that he was only a transcendent cultivator in the end. In addition, the strongest aspect of the extreme sword Dao was its attack. It covered its shortcomings in other aspects through its attack. In reality, if a saint expert did not fight him head-on and relied on the power of her domain to constantly exhaust him, he would probably still be unable to avoid the fate of turning around and fleeing. This should not be your maximum speed. Let me see your maximum speed. Bai Shuang sensed that Sing Hui was getting farther and farther away, so she immediately said this. Qing Su looked at Bai Shuang, and a sense of competitiveness that he should not have developed appeared in his heart. He immediately said, "Then, you'll have to watch carefully." After saying this, his sword intent erupted. Light flowed. In the next moment, Sing Hui, who had maintained a speed of 30 to 40,000 kilometers per hour at most, seemed to have turned into a stream of light. He swept up a deafening sonic boom and left Bai Shuang's field of vision in an instant. Just the pressure caused by flying at full speed had already caused the vitality of heaven and earth within a radius of a few thousand meters to become chaotic. There were even bursts of thunderstorms and magnetism flickering within. This speed, Sword Master Bai Heng's eyes flashed, and in the next moment he completely erupted. Not only did his domain surge, but there was also a fiery red phantom in the domain that looked like a god of fire flickering within. Before the person arrived, the blazing power of the domain had already burned layers of the void within a radius of dozens of kilometers. Xing Hui sensed that Sword Master Bai Heng's speed had suddenly increased and quickly understood why she had such a high speed. She had actually used temperature to accelerate the movement of molecules to achieve the goal of increasing her speed. However, although this method could be considered brilliant, it was still inferior to Xing Hui's supreme divine ability. Xing Hui's burning sword intent had not risen to the peak, but his speed had reached at least 80,000 kilometers per hour. Although Sword Master Bai Heng's speed was fast, it was at most 60,000 kilometers per hour. The two of them traveled at extreme speed. After traveling for several thousand kilometers, Xing Hui finally left Sword Master Bai Heng in the dust. This is the first time I've discovered that there is actually someone whose realm is lower than mine who has left me behind in terms of speed. Xing Hui waited for a moment, and Bai Shuang also caught up. A trace of competitiveness flashed in her eyes as she looked at him. The method you use to increase your speed is also very impressive. If it is perfected, it will be difficult for anyone in the Saint stage to compare to you in terms of speed. Moreover, my divine ability is based on speed. If I still can't gain an advantage in terms of speed with my divine ability, then how can this divine ability be considered supreme? Supreme divine ability. Bai Shuang praised, but there was no jealousy in her starry eyes. Let's fly to Sky Dome at full speed and arrive in 1 or 2 days. However, this matter is not particularly urgent, so there is no need to worry about it. On the way to Sky Dome, the two of us can have a good discussion about each other's experiences with the Sword of the Glorious Sun and the Sword of the Blazing Sun. We will do our best to completely master these two techniques and increase their power to a higher level. Okay, I was thinking the same thing. Then, let me talk about my understanding of the Sword of the Blazing Sun. As Xing Hui spoke, the two of them flew through the air on their swords and gradually disappeared into the distance. Their clear voices also slowly drifted away. The setting sun sprinkled down, dyeing the world golden. Unfortunately, there was no painter here who could record this harmonious and brilliant scene and turn it into eternity. Chapter 604. Firmament. In the conference room of Firmament Realm, Firmament Master, Master Tsang Zhen, Master Yuanri, and other core members who spent most of their time in seclusion were all gathered in the room, their faces filled with surprise and joy. According to the latest news I've received, the representative of the Rainbow Sword Sect, Sword Master Bai Heng, is currently on his way here. The main reason they've come to visit us is to discuss the matter of the alliance. Firmament Master said with a faint smile on his face. During this period of time he, a saint expert, had been so worried that his white hair had grown a lot. Now, he finally received some good news. It's strange. That's strange. A few decades ago, when Firmament was at its peak, we went to the Rainbow Sword Sect to seek an alliance, but the Rainbow Sword Sect still refused us. Now, Firmament is in its most critical moment. The Crimson Wings, who originally intended to cooperate with us, directly stopped all cooperation with us, and the Ghost God Sect took the opportunity to hit us while we were down. At this time, the Rainbow Sword Sect actually chose to ally with us. No matter how you look at it, it's a little unbelievable. Is there a problem with this? Is there a problem? Master Three Wonders said with a frown. Although he was a member of the 6 sacred sects, as long as Firmament Realm didn't have a conflict with the 6 sacred sects, he would still side with Firmament Realm. Otherwise, Firmament Realm wouldn't have listed him as one of the core members. According to Rainbow Sword Sect, this matter is related to Pak Hui. Firmament Master said with a faint smile. Pak Hui. Several masters, as well as Purple Sky Reverend, Wu Fa Jinren, Bai Qi, and Yulan in the core circle, were somewhat puzzled. Among them, Master Yuanri, who had never met Xing Hui before, asked curiously, "Is it that little guy who's first in the battle of primal chaos? I remember that he joined Firmament Realm more than 10 years ago." Although I heard you all mention that he's very talented, how could he have the ability to control the will of Rainbow Sword Sect in just 10 years? I don't know the specifics of this matter, but Pak Hui and Sword Master Bai Heng are currently rushing towards us. Calculating the time, they'll probably arrive tonight. If they're in a hurry, they should be here by now. Firmament Master said. However, he had a vague idea in his heart. A peerless genius who only used a dozen years to cultivate to the transcendent realm. Furthermore, what he awakened was not an ordinary transcendent art. If he chose to join the White Rainbow Sword Sect as a price to facilitate the alliance between the two great powers, the White Rainbow Sword Sect might really agree. After all, the Rainbow Sword Sect also had an enemy, and that was the Divine Tao Sect that was supported by the Heavenly Tao. As Sword Master Bai Heng had appeared out of nowhere, his talent could be said to be astounding. It was unprecedented in the Divine Wilderness for 10,000 years. To prevent her growth from threatening the plans of the Heavenly Tao to sweep through the entire Divine Wilderness, the Divine Tao Sect had even temporarily put down their prejudice against the Great Desolate Sect and turned to suppress the Rainbow Sword Sect. Under the Divine Tao Sect's encirclement and suppression, the Rainbow Sword Sect's forces had shrunk by almost half in a short 100 years, and their development during this period of time had come to a complete standstill. The reason why the White Rainbow Sword Sect refused Sky Dome's alliance back then was because they were worried that once they joined forces with Sky Dome, the Divine Tao Sect's attitude towards the White Rainbow Sword Sect would change from encirclement to forcefully attacking. At that time, the White Rainbow Sword Sect would even be in danger of being annihilated. As for the sudden change in thinking, on one hand, Sword Master Bai Heng had already matured, and his cultivation was second only to the top 10 powerhouses in the entire Divine Wilderness. On the other hand, if the White Rainbow Sword Sect did not take any action, they would sooner or later be suppressed by the Divine Tao Sect that was supported by the Heavenly Tao. Thus, they had no choice but to find a breakthrough point. Then let's wait for that little guy to come over. I'm very curious about him. Venerable Yuan Ri said with a smile. To the side, Venerable Tsangzhen looked at Venerable Yuan Ri with a somewhat strange expression. There was indeed nothing wrong with Venerable Yuan Ri calling Qing Su a little fellow based on his age. However, Qing Su's ability was no ordinary ability. If the two truly clashed head-on, as long as Qing Su did not choose to take Venerable Yuan Ri's lawful embodiment of heaven and earth head-on, then Venerable Yuan Ri might not be able to do anything to Tsing Hui. However, he naturally would not say these words out loud. Venerable Yuan Ri, they're here. Her Excellency Pak Hui and Sword Master Bai Heng are here. Fast, so fast. Just as everyone was discussing, a figure suddenly appeared in this meeting room. It was one of the Golden Core Elders responsible for keeping an eye on Sky Dome's encampment. They're here? Good, I'll go and welcome them on behalf of Sky Dome. Venerable Yuan Ri said. I just happen to be in the encampment, so I'll go and take a look. Venerable Yuan Ri said. I'm rushing towards the encampment, and there's still about 2 hours to go. I thought I would be able to make it, but I didn't expect them to be so fast. The White Rainbow Sword Sect is more than 200,000 kilometers away from our Sky Dome encampment. Even if an almighty used a 12th grade flying sword and flew at full speed without caring about the consumption of true essence, it would still take nearly 2 days to arrive. It hasn't even been 8 hours since the news arrived? Venerable Yuan Ri was somewhat astonished. Ha, I told all of you that you can't treat that kid Pak Hui as normal. Alright, I'll go and see what method this kid used to convince the White Rainbow Sword Sect, and even make them not hesitate to send one of the 3 great sword masters, Sword Master Bai Heng, to our Sky Dome to discuss the matter of the alliance. Venerable Yuan Ri laughed loudly, and his figure quickly disappeared from the meeting room. The others nodded and left one after another. As for those cultivators who were not in the Sky Dome encampment, they could only regretfully miss this important meeting for the entire Sky Dome. The Sky Dome encampment is just up ahead. Tsing Hui flew forward on his sword, looking at the continuous building area, and said with a smile, in terms of grandeur, it's far from being comparable to the White Rainbow Sword Sect. The core of Tianxiong is the primal chaos divine palace and not the many buildings outside. As long as the Primal Chaos Divine Palace still exists, even if these buildings are only a few courtyards, no one will dare to underestimate them. Sword Master Bai Heng said. Xing Hui nodded and was about to say something, but at this time, several flowing lights came whistling in front of them, and one of them was surprisingly Venerable Yuan Ri, who Xing Hui was most familiar with. However, Sword Master Bai Heng came on behalf of the White Rainbow Sword Sect, and she was an invincible giant in the divine realm, so Sky Dome did not dare to slight her. The person leading the several flowing lights was surprisingly the nominal leader of Sky Dome, Venerable Yuan Ri, who had the strength of the divine realm. Behind him were Venerable Yuan Ri and Venerable Yuan Ri, and 3 other people, without exception, were all powerful figures who had cultivated divine abilities. The core of the Sky Dome realm was in the Chaos Temple. Normally, many cultivators would not gather in one place. To be able to pull out 3 powerful figures and 2 lawful phenomenon of heaven and earth cultivators in one go was already considered a grand ceremony. Venerable Yuan Ri, Venerable Yuan Ri, Venerable Yuan Zhen. Xing Hui looked at them and bowed slightly. Ha, Pak Hui, you have done a great service to persuade the White Rainbow Sword Sect to form an alliance with Sky Dome. Venerable Yuan Ri said with a smile. Venerable Yuan Ri also nodded. At this time, he was even considering whether to take advantage of this alliance to discuss the matter of the infinite Tao fruit with Venerable Yuan Ri. Sword Master Bai Heng, we have been cooperating for a long time, and we met once more than 40 years ago. Not long ago, it was also thanks to you that we saved Zhu Zhao. If we can really form an alliance now, it will be like adding 2 families to one another. We have indeed come with sincerity. Sword Master Bai Heng nodded slightly. Ha, I have been waiting for this day for a long time, please come in. Venerable Yuan Ri laughed loudly, which was rare. Please. Following Venerable Yuan Ri's lead, the group of people entered the Sky Dome encampment. Although the Sky Dome encampment in the Infinite region could not be compared to the White Rainbow Sword Sect, which was an ancient sect with a history of thousands of years, it still had a very deep foundation. Xing Hui had only taken a quick glance when he came the last time, but now he could immediately sense the hidden wonders in this encampment. At least, the Hidden Sword Sect and the Arcane Arts Sect that he had previously been in charge of were far inferior to this encampment. Under Venerable Yuan Ri's lead, the group of people quickly came to the reception hall, where many attendants served tea and snacks. After taking a break, Sword Master Bai Heng went straight to the point. The alliance between the White Rainbow Sword Sect and the Sky Dome Alliance was facilitated by Sword Master Pak Hui. Therefore, although I am the leader of this alliance, we will also fully consider Sword Master Pak Hui's opinion. You can discuss it first, and try your best to come up with a proposal that will satisfy both of us. Sword Master Bai Heng's words naturally took into account that Xing Hui might be caught in the middle and put in a difficult position. Therefore, he asked Xing Hui to come forward first, and after they understood each other's needs, they would discuss the details one by one. Sword Master? Her words were ordinary, but in the ears of Venerable Yuan Ri, and Venerable Tsang Zhen, who wanted to take the opportunity to have a good talk with Xing Hui, it was no less than a sudden clap of thunder. After a while, Venerable Tsang Zhen said with some surprise, Sword Master Bai Heng, what did you just say? Did you just call Pak Hui Sword Master? Sword Master Bai Heng glanced at Xing Hui. She thought that Xing Hui had already greeted the people from the Sky Dome Alliance. Now that she heard Venerable Tsang Zhen's question, she could only answer truthfully, yes, Sword Master Pak Hui has joined our White Rainbow Sword Sect and is our 4th Sword Master. Although he is only an honorary Sword Master, his position is already enough to completely represent our White Rainbow Sword Sect. The White Rainbow Sword Sect actually made Xing Hui Sword Master. Sword Master is the most honorable existence in the White Rainbow Sword Sect, equivalent to a Tao Master in the Heavenly Tao, an Emperor in the Eternal Realm, and a Divine Master in the Divine Wilderness. Usually, only the Saint Stage Giants can take on this position. Pak Hui Sword Master, isn't this a little too ostentatious? Venerable Tsang Zhen was a little worried. He was really afraid that the White Rainbow Sword Sect's actions would make Xing Hui Sword Master overpraise. Pak Hui Sword Master's position is worthy of his title. Sword Master Bai Heng said, then turned to Tsing Hui Sword Master Pak Hui Sword Master to explain the specifics to everyone. Worthy of his title? How is he worthy of his title? Venerable Tsongjin anxiously turned to Tsing Hui Sword Master. On the other hand, Venerable Tsongjin seemed to have suddenly thought of something and suddenly stood up in shock. Pak Hui Sword Master, you've always said that you've awakened an extraordinary divine power, but you've never said what level it is. Could it be that the divine power you've awakened isn't as simple as a great divine power, but a supreme divine power that's said to be able to defeat saints and rival saints? Chapter 605. Supreme Divine Ability? Pak Hui derived a supreme divine ability? Supreme divine ability, this is something that has not happened in 10,000 years. The resources needed to complete the peerless gold core are vast, let alone the sovereign gold core. Moreover, even with the sovereign gold core, if the cultivator does not have a deep foundation, it is not easy to awaken a supreme divine ability. How rich must one be to be able to cultivate a sovereign gold core and derive a supreme divine ability? Venerable Yuanri and Venerable Tsongzhen were shocked by Venerable Firmament's guess. However, Venerable Firmament did not refute his guess. Instead, he looked at Tsing Hui. You didn't dig out the cave of a world builder with a thought, did you? Not to the extent of a world builder's cave, but it is true that the divine ability I derived is extraordinary. As for whether it is a supreme divine ability or not, I can't be sure because there is no supreme divine ability in the world that I can use as a reference. Tsing Hui said, it should be a supreme divine ability, I can't be wrong. Sword Master Bai Heng said thoughtfully, I heard from Sword Saint Ji Xian about your battle with Real God Tribulation. Although you used the Sword of the Sun to tear apart Real God Tribulation's territory, if it wasn't for the amplification of a supreme divine power, the effect of your Sword of the Sun wouldn't have reached such a shocking level. Hence, it's highly possible that you are the first derivative of a supreme divine power that was born since the divine wilderness was shattered. True God Suffering? You once fought with True God Suffering of the Black Flame sect? True God Suffering is an out-and-out Saint Realm powerhouse. Although his combat strength is not outstanding among many Saint Realm powerhouses, he once defeated a first-class sect with 6 celestial bodies and 19 almighties by himself. He can be said to be famous. But in the end he still lost. Venerable Origin's son didn't doubt this outcome, and he consoled her instead. Since you were able to resist him, it's enough to prove that your combat strength has already surpassed any Saint Realm expert. I'm afraid that even if we old fellows went up against True God Suffering, we would only be able to barely survive. It's already very good that you were able to tear apart his domain. Although Sword Master Pak Hui was defeated, she forced True God Suffering to burn her domain Origin. If that wasn't the case, the one who lost in the end would have been True God Suffering and not Pak Hui. Therefore, the few sword masters of the Rainbow Sword sect have unanimously determined that although Pak Hui isn't a holy god, she has strength that is close to a holy god. Sword Master Bai Heng dropped another bomb. Immediately, Venerable Yuan Ri's words of comfort stopped in midair, burning domain Origin. These veteran Earth and celestial phenomenon experts were able to survive in front of the Tribulation True God, but that was under the condition that the Tribulation True God didn't want to kill them. If a Saint Realm expert really chased after them, any celestial phenomenon expert would only have a dead end. But Tsing Hui, he actually forced True God Suffering to burn her domain Origin? And in the end, he even managed to escape unscathed? For a moment, this celestial phenomenon Earth-level expert with a lofty status in the Sky Dome sect was dumbfounded. True God Suffering actually burned her domain Origin. Venerable Yuan Ri stared at Tsing Hui and couldn't help but inhale a breath of cold air. Others might not know, but he was very clear that Tsing Hui's chaotic level was above level 40. If True God Suffering could only defeat Tsing Hui after burning her domain Origin, then didn't that mean Tsing Hui had the ability to exhaust a Saint Realm powerhouse to death by relying on the backtracking technique and recovery characteristics? At this moment, he finally understood why the Rainbow Sword sect would regard Tsing Hui as the fourth sword master. With Tsing Hui's talent, he was more than qualified to be the fourth sword master of the Rainbow Sword sect. If he could step into the Saint Realm one day and condense a domain. Thinking of this, Venerable Yuan Ri's eyes suddenly lit up. If Tsing Hui could really condense a domain, with the terrifying power of a supreme divine ability, even the 10 strongest powerhouses wouldn't be able to do anything to Tsing Hui. Especially, Tsing Hui had only used a dozen years to cultivate from the spirit-refining realm to the divine ability realm. Thinking of this, the Firmament Master finally made up his mind. He would do whatever it took to make Tsing Hui step into the Saint Realm. Only then would Sky Dome sect be able to prosper in the divine wilderness. Good. At this moment, the shocked Venerable Master Tsongzhen couldn't help but cheer. I didn't expect you to run ahead of us without a word. You fought against a saint and forced him to burn his domain origin. Amazing. Haha, I'm afraid it won't be long before you completely surpass that old fellow Zhu Zhao. At that time, let's see how he can maintain his position as the number one person in the Sky Dome sect. Venerable Yuan Ri also nodded solemnly. Even though he was shocked by Qing Su's strength, Heaven's Dome was currently in a precarious situation. It just so happened that they needed great strength to raise their morale. Qing Su possessed the battle prowess of a saint, which was without a doubt a boost to Heaven's Dome's morale. If he considered the matter of the Rainbow Sword sect's alliance, Tsing Hui was simply the savior of their Sky Dome sect. This matter shouldn't be widely publicized at the moment. Treat Pak Hui as a trump card of our Sky Dome sect. During the battle against the Divine Path sect and the Divine Path sect, she might be able to kill a Saint Realm powerhouse from the Divine Path sect or the Divine Path sect at a critical moment. Once a Saint Realm powerhouse from the Divine Path sect or the Divine Path sect falls, the pressure on either of our two sects will be greatly reduced. Venerable Yuan Ri said quickly as if he had a plan. It shouldn't be widely publicized. Sword Master Bai Heng frowned. I'm afraid it's a little troublesome. Almost all of the upper echelons of our Rainbow Sword sect are aware of this matter. Moreover, the two of you plan to push Tsing Hui to the front of the stage. Our Rainbow Sword sect will have a fourth sword master. I believe this will be enough to make the Divine Path sect restrain some of their arrogance. No. If your Rainbow Sword sect really thinks that Tsing Hui's appearance can make the Divine Path sect restrain their arrogance, then you're gravely mistaken. You must know that the Rainbow Sword sect has no enmity with the Divine Path sect, so why is the Divine Path sect targeting you? It's because of your existence, Sword Master Bai Heng. Your talent has caused the Heavenly Tao to panic. They're afraid that you'll grow to a level where you can suppress Tao's sovereign primal chaos in the future. As a result, they've sent the Divine Path sect to suppress you in every possible way, reducing the Rainbow Sword sect's space for survival. If not for the fact that the Heavenly Tao also has many enemies, their methods would be even more intense. If your Rainbow Sword sect pushes Tsing Hui out at this time, an almighty who can give birth to supreme divine abilities, this will definitely shock the world. In the end, it will force the divine wilderness, eternal, and Heavenly Tao to completely unite. When Sword Master Bai Heng heard this, he immediately understood the severity of the matter. I have to inform Sword Master Long Rainbow about this matter immediately. We've only seen the 4 sword masters in our sect being able to restrain the Divine Path sect's arrogance, but we've neglected the possible negative effects of pushing Tsing Hui out. I reckon that Sword Master Long Rainbow just hasn't reacted yet. When she does, she'll naturally make you keep this a secret. As Venerable Firmament spoke, his gaze fell on Tsing Hui. In fact, if Tsing Hui can break through to the divine realm and push him out, all the problems will be easily solved. With the tyrannical power of supreme divine abilities, once he steps into the divine realm, he'll completely become the number one person in the divine wilderness. Even Tao's sovereign primal chaos, divine sovereign ancient desolation, and Emperor Tai Yi won't be his match. At that time, we might be able to use Tsing Hui as the core to establish a force that's completely loyal to the divine wilderness and completely expel the invaders like the Heavenly Tao and Eternal. Divine Realm. Venerable Origin Sun's gaze fell on Tsing Hui. He's just reached the divine realm. It won't be easy for him to break through to the divine realm in a short period of time. That's not necessarily true. Venerables, don't forget the time it took for Pak Hui to reach the divine realm from the awakening realm. Although Swordmaster Bai Heng didn't know much about Xing Hui's growth process, he had a deep impression of it. That's right. What he needs to do now is to dig out his divine abilities and dig out their potential to the extreme, and even let them resonate with the laws. At that time, he'll be able to find an opportunity to step into the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. And we, Venerable Firmament, are willing to provide this opportunity. At this point, Venerable Firmament turned to Xing Hui with certainty. As long as you can resonate with the laws, I'm confident that I can push you to the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Firmament, Venerable Origin's son seemed to understand something. His expression changed slightly, and he was about to say something. I know what I'm doing. Venerable Firmament waved his hand and interrupted Venerable Origin Sunday. Good steel should be used on the blade. Now, it's time for that thing to come into play. On the side, Venerable Tsongzhen naturally agreed with Venerable Firmament's decision. Although Swordmaster Bai Heng didn't know what they were talking about, he still said after pondering for a while, to cultivate a domain, one must first comprehend their own momentum, the laws, and the innate charm of bearing the laws. Only when the three are combined can one condense a domain and advance to the divine realm. Our Baihong Sword Sect's ability is limited in other aspects, so I don't dare to say much. But in terms of momentum, let our Baihong Sword Sect think of a way. I've long heard of the Baihong Sword Sect's legendary divine sword, the Rainbow Sword. If Xing Hui can comprehend and cultivate under the Rainbow Sword, he'll have almost succeeded in comprehending the sword momentum. Venerable Firmament said happily. Venerable Tsongzhen also nodded seriously. The Baihong Sword Sect is willing to activate the Rainbow Sword to let Pak Hui cultivate. We, Venerable Firmament, will remember this kindness in our hearts. If there's a need in the future, Venerable Firmament will definitely not refuse. Venerable Tsongzhen is too polite. Pak Hui is a member of Venerable Firmament, and also the fourth Sword Master of our Baihong Sword Sect. As the Sword Master of our Baihong Sword Sect, we should try our best to help him cultivate. If his strength increases, the strength of our Baihong Sword Sect will increase. This is a win-win situation. Sword Master Bai Heng said with a smile. Then it's settled. Venerable Firmament settled the matter in one sentence, and then turned to Xing Hui. You came here mainly to comprehend the momentum of all of us. Origin's son, I, and the others are all here. Next, I'll let you comprehend it well. I hope you can store it as experience. Then, when you comprehend the Rainbow Sword, you'll be able to comprehend the sword momentum that belongs to you in one fell swoop. Thank you, Venerable Firmament. Xing Hui bowed slightly to Venerable Firmament and the others. Using the momentum of all of us to help you comprehend the mystery of momentum? Sword Master Bai Heng nodded. Then count me in. We both cultivate sword momentum. My sword momentum should be of some help to you. In addition, because we have to come to Venerable Firmament to discuss the alliance, our swordsmanship competition has been postponed. We can use Venerable Firmament's venue to debate. It's great that Sword Master Bai Heng is willing to help. There's no time to lose. Let's go to the martial arts practice field. Chapter 606. Venerable Yuanri and Venerable Tsongzhen were both experts who had comprehended force. As for Venerable Firmament and Sword Master Bai Heng, they had already stepped into the divine realm. However, if a peak lawful embodiment of heaven and earth expert wanted to step into the divine realm, in addition to force and law comprehension, there was another important factor, which was the innate divine charm. Without the innate divine charm, one couldn't condense the domain origin and manifest the power of the domain. It was like a prominent divine realm expert. Even if he had the bloodline and soul of a divine beast, if he didn't have enough true qi, he still couldn't manifest the divine realm. However, for all lawful embodiment of heaven and earth experts, the innate divine charm that condensed the domain origin was the most precious. If one wanted to get these treasures, one could either buy them from the Chaos Treasure Pavilion, dig up an ancient cave mansion by luck, or go to the outer sea tens of millions of kilometers away to kill divine beasts. The Chaos Treasure Pavilion's products were like a drop in the bucket, and the ancient cave mansion was completely dependent on luck. The only safe way was to go to the outer sea to kill divine beasts, but it was too dangerous. Without the cooperation of 2 divine realm experts, 1 or 2 adult divine beasts had to be left behind every time they killed them. If more than 10 divine realm experts were sent to the outer sea at once, their forces would definitely be empty. Because of these harsh conditions, Venerable Tsang Zhen and Venerable Yuanri clearly had the foundation to break through to the divine realm, but they still couldn't truly step into the divine realm. Even if they occasionally obtained some innate divine charm, they would contribute it to Venerable Zhuzhao, so that he could reach the peak of the domain origin realm as soon as possible, step into the insightful emptiness realm, and even shatter the vacuum realm. I'll go first. On the training field, Venerable Tsangzhen was the first to speak. Okay, Tsangzhen, I wonder if you have a new understanding of your earth force after all these years? Venerable Firmament and Venerable Yuanri said with a smile. Sword Master Bai Heng also stood on the side. Venerable Tsangzhen and the others could be called her seniors. Although their realms were not at the same level, since Venerable Tsangzhen had spoken, she naturally had to be modest. Pakhui boy, I'll use all my strength to stimulate my earth force now. Feel it well. Sing Hui nodded and stared at Venerable Tsangzhen, his spirit rose to the extreme. As Venerable Tsangzhen's aura, Venerable Tsangzhen in front of him seemed to have transformed into a giant with a radius of a few hundred kilometers. His chi seemed Tsangzhen in front of him seemed to have transformed into a giant with a radius of several hundred kilometers. With his chi's chi, he seemed Tsangzhen in front of him seemed to transformed into a god with a radius. And Tianjin seemed to have turned of S. And Tsang Ji S had seemed to be a Zun's and it had to be of Aa's realm. Be careful! Venerable Tsangzhen shouted. In the next moment, the earth force that had merged with him seemed to be controlled by an invisible giant hand and crashed down on Tsinghui. In an instant, the area around Tsinghui seemed to be pressed down by a towering mountain. He could clearly feel the all-pervasive power continuously pressing down on his body. In just a breath's time, it had already reached the limit of what his body could bear. This power, not good. Tsinghui's expression changed. Venerable Tsangzhen's force was all-pervasive and restrained him. Venerable Tsangzhen had just stimulated this force, and it was about to seriously injure him. He had no choice but to shout loudly. His sword intent erupted, and a mighty and brilliant sword light rose up and illuminated the world. The powerful will disperse the force, that Venerable Tsangzhen was the main force and burned the power contained within it. Pakhui boy, what are you? Seeing that Tsinghui had actually dispersed his force, Venerable Tsangzhen could not help but feel a little strange. Didn't he say that he would sense his force? Why did Tsinghui disperse it when he had just started and his force had not fully erupted? Although the divine ability I derived is powerful, it comes at the cost of sacrificing my own defensive power. After the divine ability is derived, I can't even protect my body with Zhenyuan. Venerable Tsangzhen's force. I can't block it just by relying on my own body. Tsinghui smiled bitterly. At the cost of sacrificing your own defensive power? You can't even protect your body with Zhenyuan? Venerable Tsangzhen was slightly surprised. Then won't it be very dangerous when you're fighting with your opponent? Venerable Tsangzhen, don't worry about this. Although the derivation of my divine ability will greatly reduce my defensive power, it will greatly increase my speed. Therefore, I can completely tear the enemy's attack apart before it arrives. It's just like the power of the domain of the Saint Stage Giants. Although the power of the domain can be said to be all-pervasive and surging, if I can slash a dozen times with great power in one breath, I can still cut the domain into a vacuum. Is that so? Venerable Tsangzhen frowned. In that case, Pakhui, use your own method to feel the mystery of force in the confrontation with Venerable Tsangzhen's force. Venerable Tsongzhen said. That's what I'm thinking. Okay, but you have to be a little light. Venerable Tsongzhen, don't worry. Then, let's continue. Venerable Tsongzhen didn't waste any more time, and the heavy force of the earth erupted again. In the beginning, Venerable Tsongzhen still used the force of the earth that he controlled to suppress Tsinghui. However, every time the force of the earth descended on Tsinghui's body, he would rely on his brilliant sword intent to disperse it. In the later stage, Venerable Tsongzhen's competitive spirit seemed to have been aroused, and he directly landed beside Tsinghui and integrated his own power into the force of the earth, causing his body to become a huge source of gravity. Under this force, it quickly exceeded the limit that Tsinghui's sword intent could disperse. No matter how strong his sword intent was, it was only at the level of perfection after all. How could it be compared with this kind of true force? Mass will force is the integration of one's own will and external power, forming a kind of force of the heavens and earth. After the competition with Venerable Tsongzhen ended, Tsinghui understood something. His recovery characteristics were as high as the 10th stage, and his true qi recovery speed was extremely fast. Before long, he had already recovered to the peak, and then it was Venerable Yuanri's turn. After Venerable Yuanri, it was Venerable Firmament's turn and Sword Master Bai Heng's turn. Venerable Firmament's and Sword Master Bai Heng's forces had already integrated with their own domains. Even if they used it alone, it still far surpassed Venerable Yuanri's and Venerable Tsongzhen's forces. Under this suppression, Tsinghui naturally had a deeper understanding and comprehension of forces. How is it? Sword Master Bai Heng stepped forward and asked with a smile. I've figured out the relationship between domains and forces. Tsinghui said, I need to properly organize what I've learned today. As for the matter of the alliance between the two sects, I'll have to rely on Sword Master Bai Heng. I'm not good with words, and I'll definitely be at a disadvantage if I discuss this matter with Venerable Firmament. However, Pak Hui, you've grown up thanks to Firmament. Now that you're the fourth Sword Master of our White Rainbow Sword sect, it doesn't matter if our White Rainbow Sword sect suffers a little loss. Sword Master Bai Heng smiled. When Venerable Firmament saw this scene, how could he not understand that Sword Master Bai Heng was doing Tsinghui a favor? Obviously, she had deeply recognized the potential contained in Tsinghui. She immediately said, Don't worry, our Firmament has already gone to the White Rainbow Sword sect to discuss the matter of the alliance with your White Rainbow Sword sect a few decades ago. We're naturally very sincere, and the final outcome of the discussion will definitely not disappoint your White Rainbow Sword sect. Then I can't wait. Venerable Firmament and Sword Master Bai Heng said, and the two of them quickly left the training field with Venerable Yuanri. Only Tsinghui and Venerable Tsongzhen were left in the training field. Looking at Venerable Tsongzhen who hadn't left, Tsinghui couldn't help but look at him. Venerable Firmament, is there anything else you need to tell me? Indeed, there's something I want to discuss with you. Please speak, Venerable Firmament. I can see that in your heart, you're still biased towards our Firmament. Tsinghui nodded. His growth was all thanks to the guidance of Venerable Firmament, Venerable Tsongzhen, and Venerable Zhuzhou. In addition, Venerable Firmament also attached great importance to him. Although he had entered the White Rainbow Sword sect and become the fourth Sword Master, if Firmament and the White Rainbow Sword sect really went to war for some reason, Tsinghui felt that he would most likely choose to stand on Firmament's side. What kind of alliance do you think is the most reliable? What kind of alliance is the most reliable? Tsinghui pondered for a moment. It's probably the same interests, the same position, and the same attitude. No! Venerable Tsongzhen shook his head. An alliance brought about by interests and positions may be considered solid, but it can't be considered impregnable. It's just like a chamber of commerce among mortals. A manager who is hired with a lot of money may be cautious and conscientious, but he may not be willing to live and die with this chamber of commerce. At this point, Venerable Tsongzhen's tone paused slightly. Only emotional fetters are the best way to tie people to the war chariot. Emotional fetters? Tsinghui was slightly taken aback. That's right. It's just like how we accidentally tied you to the war chariot of our Sky Dome sect. This is the power of emotions. Venerable Tsangzhen means, don't you think that you and Sword Master Bai Heng can be called a golden couple, a match made in heaven? One can be called the most outstanding genius in the past 10,000 years. At such a young age, he cultivated to the divine realm and stood proudly at the peak of the divine wilderness, becoming in existence second only to the 10 strongest experts in the entire divine wilderness. The other is the first cultivator to awaken a supreme divine ability since the divine wilderness was shattered, completing an unprecedented feat in the past 10,000 years. A perfect match. If the two of you can walk together, Sky Dome and the White Rainbow Sword sect will become one family, and the relationship between them will be unbreakable. Me and Sword Master Bai Heng? Xing Hui looked at Venerable Tsangzhen and could not help but recall the short period of time he spent with Sword Master Bai Heng. It was undeniable that the appearance of Sword Master Bai Heng had indeed taken him by surprise. Xing Hui was also full of admiration for her, and he did have a good impression of her, but these were far from enough for the two of them to walk together. Moreover, what he needed to do now was to return to the world of Earth as soon as possible, reunite with his parents and family, see senior sister Jiang Ningji, and fulfill his promise to her. To him, he was just a passerby in this world. If he left something behind in this world, that would be irresponsible to Sword Master Bai Heng. After a moment of silence, Xing Hui shook his head. This matter can't be done. What are you worried about? Venerable Tsangzhen had seen countless people and naturally saw some clues. Xing Hui shook his head and did not say much. Seeing this, Venerable Tsangzhen could not persuade him anymore, and could only put the matter aside for the time being. Chapter 607. Rumble. Blazing waves of heat carried with them an aura that could incinerate the heavens and boil the seas, constantly spreading out in all directions. Even though the Sky Dome encampment's martial arts practice ground had been specially fortified and had been protected by powerful formations, it still shook as if it could be destroyed by this destructive force at any moment. This is my understanding of the Sword of the Sun. The direction I chose was not to fuse the two swords of the sun to produce the fusion effect you said. I directly used the Sword of the Sun as the foundation and changed the internal energy structure, transforming it into the Sword of the Sun. Although the consumption has increased a lot, with the help of the domain and the recovery ability of the 10th step, it can be smoothly displayed. It will not put too much of a burden on me. As the destructive blazing torrent gradually dissipated, in the endless flames, Sword Master Bai Heng, who looked spotless in a white robe, slowly walked out, explaining the various changes in his sword. Cause changes to occur within it. Complete the fusion process. Hearing Sword Master Bai Heng's words, Xing Hui had to admit that this was the difference in accumulation. Although he had cultivated the method of transforming his internal energy into virtual energy, and his degree of control over his internal energy was far beyond that of ordinary experts, but compared to those experts who had been immersed in the path of cultivation for hundreds of years, his foundation was still lacking. Only Sword Master Bai Heng could display the Sword of the Sun. If it was him. In the case of insufficient internal energy control, he could not directly transform the Sword of the Sun into the Sword of the Sun. In fact, I also have my own ideas about the next derivation of this swordsmanship. Transforming the Sword of the Sun into the Sword of the Sun, after all, there is a transformation process. In a life and death battle, a moment of delay may lead to a completely different outcome of the final battle. In this case, the practicality of the Sword of the Sun is actually not much better than the Sword of the Sun. To solve this problem, I think we can choose to use the method of constructing the Sword of the Sun in advance to make up for this drawback. Construct the Sword of the Sun in advance? Construct the operation method of the Sword of the Sun in your own body. In this way, there is no need for the transformation process at all, and you can directly slash out the extremely powerful Sword of the Sun. But the only drawback is that the first sword you can choose to use when fighting with others is only the Sword of the Sun. If you encounter opponents who are unwilling to kill, you can't even control the strength of your sword. In other words, this is storing power. Storing power? Sword Master Bai Heng's idea made Xing Hui's eyes light up. Yes, just like the Jindan, I've been researching how to create a second energy source similar to the Jindan in my body, specifically to store and construct the Sword of Sunburst. Although this step is not a problem, it is a little troublesome to completely integrate this energy source with the origin of the domain. And the most important thing in the divine realm is the domain. Having the domain and not being able to use it are two completely different concepts. Can't be integrated with the domain origin? Have you ever thought of using a divine weapon to carry that energy? Xing Hui thought of his extreme way of the sword and asked, "You should know how unstable the energy of the Sword of the Sun is. In my body, I can always keep an eye on it and maintain its stability. If I put it in a divine weapon, no one can guarantee when it will completely explode. If I am not careful, I may even be blown to pieces." Sword Master Bai Heng paused for a moment before continuing, "Unless I can obtain a divine sword with a sword spirit. Furthermore, the sword spirit itself must have a level 13 or even level 14 spirituality. Then, the sword spirit will be able to help me suppress the power of the Sword of the Sun, sword spirit. The sword will in Xing Hui's deep red sword could actually be called the embryonic form of a sword spirit. Its level was at level 12 or even level 13, but this embryonic form of the sword spirit had not formed a complete spirituality. It only had a vague consciousness and could not communicate with Xing Hui. It was still a long way from becoming a true sword spirit. In addition, there were also a large number of sword spirits in the hidden sword sect. Unfortunately, under the erosion of countless years, the spirituality of these sword spirits had long since dissipated. The strength of their spirituality was at most at the second or third level, which was not of much use. There will be a chance to obtain it. As Xing Hui said, there was a hint of regret in his eyes. It is a pity that the Chaos Treasure Pavilion does not sell any divine weapons. At most, they only have the materials to forge divine weapons. And those materials, which rely on the divine blessing technique to forge divine weapons, do not have any spirituality at all. To nurture a divine weapon full of spirituality is not easy. Sword Master Bai Heng nodded. Although Sword Master Bai Heng's idea was not of much use for the time being, but it pointed out a direction for Xing Hui. The sword spirit in his Scarlet Abyss sword had indeed yet to be fully developed, but once it was fully developed, the level of the sword spirit spirituality would be at least level 12, and most likely level 13. Even though it was unable to perfectly carry out his orders because it was not fully developed yet, he could borrow the power of the Scarlet Abyss sword intent to suppress the power of the Sword of Sunlight within the Scarlet Abyss sword. He just needed to compress the energy of the Sword of the Sun. In this way, he could borrow the energy of the Sword of the Sun to continuously temper the Deep Red Sword, increasing the Deep Red Sword's resistance to the energy of the Sword of the Sun. On the other hand, he could constantly mobilize the power of the Sword of the Sun, which would have a significant effect on the spirituality of the Sword of the Sun. If all goes well, the number of swords of Sunburst should increase from the previous 20 or so to 40 or so swords. Xing Hui secretly judged. By the way, Xing Hui, in order to ensure that the activation of the Rainbow Sword will minimize the damage to yourself, we still need to use the Sword of the Sun to nourish the Rainbow Sword. This process will take at least a month. During this period of nourishment, will you stay in Sky Dome's encampment, or will you come back with me to the Rainbow Sword sect? The situation in Sky Dome is not very peaceful. I will stay here for the time being. If anything happens, I will see if I can help. Good, then I will go back first. Yes, I have to thank you for the alliance with Sky Dome. Sword Master Bai Heng smiled faintly. The Masters of Sky Dome are very sincere about the alliance. I will bring the news back and let our Sword Masters discuss with the Masters of Sky Dome to announce the alliance between our two forces. I believe this will be of great help in stabilizing the situation in Sky Dome. Xing Hui nodded. The two did not continue chatting, and quickly went to do their own things. Next, the most important thing for Xing Hui was to solve the problem of his physique. After seeing Sword Master Bai Heng off, Xing Hui took advantage of the fact that he was still in Sky Dome's encampment to quickly collect many powerful sacred beasts with the help of Sky Dome's power. The sacred beast's level was not high, below the 10th level, but they had to be alive. Tsing Hui wanted to use the 9 transformations of the true dragon to temper his body, and not to use the blood essence of sacred beasts to improve his cultivation. Naturally, he could not eat or refine sacred beast corpses. As one of the 10 chaotic organizations, Sky Dome's power was extraordinary. Tsing Hui entrusted this matter to Sky Dome. Within 3 days, 4 sacred beasts were captured and brought to Tsing Hui. Among the 4 sacred beasts, 1 was at the 8th level, 2 were at the 9th level, and 1 was at the 10th level. The power of blood essence in each sacred beast could be said to be surging, many times stronger than that of a human being. Hidden Sword Venerable is still recovering. However, if he wants to wake up completely, he has to find Suffering Real God and force him to tell him about the soul-locking mystic skill that he left on Hidden Sword Venerable. Otherwise, he has to wait. Wait until Hidden Sword Venerable recovers and uses his own will to break free from the soul-locking mystic skill. Tsing Hui was leaning towards the first option. Who knew if Suffering True God's special mind-locking mystic skill would bring other harm to people? No one knew what would happen after 1 or 2 years. If he wanted to find Suffering True God and force him to tell him about the mind-locking mystic skill, he could not be too weak. At least, the strength of his physical body could not be on the verge of collapsing after slashing out the 6 swords of sunlight. Real Dragon 9 changes. Let me see how strong you can make me. Tsing Hui muttered to himself. In the next moment, he went into seclusion and tried his best to break through the Real Dragon 9 changes. At the end of the day, the 9 transformations of the true dragon was only a cultivation method equivalent to the realm of awakening to the never-ending realm. It was not too difficult for him to practice Green Ruins. Coupled with the fact that he was from Tianqiong, who fully supported his many requests, even though his body was limited to the 5 transformations of the true dragon, his cultivation could still progress by leaps and bounds. In less than half a month, he had broken through to the 6th change of Real Dragon 9 changes. After another month, he had reached the 7th change of Real Dragon 9 changes. Considering that the consumption of the Rainbow Sword was related to the time it took to nurture it, Tsing Hui asked someone to send a message to the Rainbow Sword sect. After delaying his trip to the Rainbow Sword sect for a period of time, he entered the 8th change of Real Dragon 9 changes again. At the 8th change, the effect of the sacred beast's flesh was indeed reduced. Tsing Hui had a lot of blood-patterned grass in his hands. In addition, Tsing Hui had invited the alchemy master in Sky Dome, so the blood-patterned grass, which was already extraordinary, was maximized. After cultivating the 7th change of Real Dragon 9 changes for a month, his Real Dragon 9 changes had broken through to the 8th change. Compared to before, the strength of my body has increased by almost 2 times. Tsing Hui felt the majestic power contained in his body. 8 changes of Real Dragon. In terms of the strength of his body, he was no longer inferior to a Class 8 ferocious beast. Perhaps he was still lacking compared to Class 8 sacred beasts and divine beasts. However, relying on the many god weapons and skills that human cultivators had mastered, killing ordinary Class 8 ferocious beasts and spirit beasts was a piece of cake. With the strengthening of my body, the burden on the light-chasing divine power has decreased by a lot. Now, it's not a problem for me to slash out 10 sunburst swords in an instant. If I fight until my body collapses, I can even slash out 13 or even 14 sunburst swords. If an ordinary sacred beast doesn't burn their domain origin, it's impossible for them to block it. Tsing Hui was very clear about his own strength. However, at this level, it might be possible to defeat the Suffering True God, but it was still wishful thinking to beat the Suffering True God into fear and make him feel the fear of death. After all, the reason why he was able to achieve such an outstanding result last time was mainly because the Suffering True God looked down on him and was caught off guard by his divine ability, chasing light. Therefore, he still had to cultivate the 9th change of Real Dragon 9 changes. Chapter 608. Time flew by. Another 3 months passed. It took Tsing Hui half a year to cultivate the 9 changes of the Real Dragon, to the perfection of the 9 changes of the body refining technique, a realm that could not be improved. Compared to before, the physique of the 9 changes was much stronger. Although it still could not allow Tsing Hui to madly slash out 40 sunburst swords in an extreme state, it was not a problem for him to slash out 20 sunburst swords. He had full confidence that with the 20 or so sunburst swords that were as fast as flowing light, no Saint Realm expert would be able to block his attacks in a direct confrontation, if he counted in the recovery from the backtrack technique. At this moment, he was really confident that he could kill a Divine Realm expert. Unfortunately, the highest realm of the 9 changes of the real dragon is the 9th change. As for the true dragon realm, there is no more. If I can cultivate to the true dragon realm, the number of sunburst swords that I can slash out will definitely increase again, and it will not be difficult to directly reach the limit of the Scarlet Sword. Tsing Hui's eyes were somewhat regretful. It seemed that he could only think of a way to find a first-stage Son of Chaos and use the token of the Realm of Battle to try his luck. 100 Dao rhymes once. His heart ached at the thought of it. Lady Pak Hui. When Tsing Hui stepped out of the courtyard where he had cultivated in seclusion, someone immediately came forward to greet him respectfully. Leader Firmament said that if you come out of seclusion, you can go directly to his mountain peak to have a chat with him. Firmament Master. Tsing Hui nodded, tidied up a little, and then headed for the palace where Firmament Master lived. Walking in the Firmament Master's residence, Tsing Hui could clearly feel the change of atmosphere in the Firmament Master's residence. The last time he and Sword Master Bai Heng came, the atmosphere in the Firmament Master's residence was oppressive. Everyone came and went in a hurry, looking dignified, but this time, although the dignified and worried look had not completely dissipated, it was undoubtedly much better than before. At least, Tsing Hui could see a cheerful and energetic atmosphere in the crowd. It seems that the alliance between the White Rainbow Sword sect and Firmament Master has greatly improved the morale. As Tsing Hui spoke, he unknowingly arrived at the palace where Master Firmament was. When the guards at the entrance of the palace saw Tsing Hui, they immediately invited him in. They didn't even care that Firmament Master was entertaining a guest. Obviously, this was Firmament Master's order. From this, one could see how much importance Firmament Master attached to Tsing Hui. He had no choice but to treat Qing Su seriously. Even though Celestial Firmament had supported Qing Su before, the favor would run out sooner or later. Coupled with the fact that the White Rainbow Sword sect was desperately trying to poach Qing Su, Master Celestial Firmament no longer dared to treat Qing Su like any other great expert with great talent. Pak Hui is here. Wait a moment. You can rest on the side. Firmament Master was currently discussing something with a few almighties. When he saw Tsing Hui, he still took the time to speak to him. This sentence naturally attracted the attention of the almighties who were conversing with Firmament Master. In particular, the 2 Earth-level astronomical phenomenon experts looked at Tsing Hui with a surprised gaze. Obviously, they were curious as to who could attract such attention from Firmament Master. Then it settled. Firmament Master and Sword Shadow will work together to build an encampment outside the Soaring Cloud Sword sect in the Shifeng Mountain range. It will be the point of contact between our 3 forces. This point of contact will completely unite us so that we won't have to fight separately. I, Trung Qingfeng, am here to thank Firmament Master and Wutong Sword Monarch. Ha Qingfeng, you don't have to do this. In the future, the encampment of our 2 forces will have to rely on your Soaring Cloud Sword sect to take care of it. Of course. Regarding the encampment, our Soaring Cloud Sword sect will definitely arrange it properly. Teng Qingfeng said solemnly. Firmament Master then chatted with Teng Qingfeng and Wutong Sword Monarch for a while before asking someone to send them off. When these people left, Teng Qingfeng and Wutong Sword Monarch looked at Tsing Hui with great interest. They seemed to be curious as to who this young man was and why they didn't have any detailed information about him. Pak Hui, you've finished your cultivation? It seems that you've gained a lot? Firmament Master said with a smile as he gestured for Tsing Hui to drink tea. Indeed, I've gained a lot. Tsing Hui nodded. It seems that you're in a good mood. It's all right. The main thing is the alliance between Firmament Master, White Rainbow Sword Sect, and Sword Shadow. Sword Shadow? I heard you mention the encampment. Is the Sword Intent planning to set up an encampment in the Infinite Wasteland domain? Yes, you also know that Sword Shadow's base camp is outside the Infinite Wasteland domain. As for which continent it is still a mystery. Under such circumstances, even if they are completely expelled from the Infinite Wasteland domain, as long as they hide in their base camp, they will still be able to maintain their Yuan Qi. As a result, although we have formed an alliance with Sword Shadow, we still don't have much confidence. After all, Sword Shadow can afford to lose, but we can't afford to lose. Now that they have set up an encampment in the Shifeng Mountain range, although it's just a show of their attitude, for us, it's enough to share a lot of the pressure. Firmament Master said with a smile. It seems that Sword Shadow also understands that the situation is not optimistic. The alliance is no longer limited to talking. Xing Hui nodded. Sword Shadow's appearance could indeed share a lot of pressure for Firmament Master. Apart from this, I didn't expect Sword Shadow to take down the Soaring Cloud Sword Sect. Amazing. Soaring Cloud Sword Sect? Is this sect powerful? Powerful? Not really, but a long time ago, this sect was indeed powerful. Before it was destroyed, there were 3 Divine Realm Giants in the sect, and it was one of the 3 sections. However, it was later destroyed by the Divine Path sect and replaced. The 3 Divine Realm experts were all killed in one day. Firmament Master said with a sigh. It was also because of that battle that we knew that the Divine Path sect was backed by the Heavenly Way. The 3 Divine Realm experts were all killed in one day. Xing Hui's heart shuddered. The Chaos Holy Man took action. Firmament Master said, the Chaos Holy Man awakened the bloodline of the Divine Beast, the Chaos Bloodline, the Divine Grade Battle Body, the Divine Grade True Origin, and the Supreme Grade Golden Core. Although he did not derive any divine power in the end, he still stood proudly at the top of the Divine Path realm with his vast accumulation of experience. When he reached the Divine Realm and obtained a 17th grade Supreme Treasure, he transformed his domain into the Chaos Realm and became an immortal existence. His most glorious battle was when he trapped 14 Divine Realm Giants by himself and held on for an entire day under their attacks. He held on for an entire day under the attacks of 14 Divine Realm Giants by himself. Xing Hui's heart shuddered. That's right. Moreover, he hadn't reached the insightful Void Realm at that time. Now that he's reached the insightful Void Realm, if he wants to be our enemy, he only needs to use the Chaos Realm to envelop me. I'm afraid that even if I spend 10 or 20 years attacking without rest, I won't be able to tear the Chaos Realm and escape. At this point, the Firmament Master sighed. In fact, if it weren't for the Son of Chaos 25th grade Incarnation Technique and 30th grade Teleportation Technique, the Chaos Holy Man would be the #1 Dao Master in the Divine Wilderness. Chaos. Xing Hui knew about this divine beast. It was a kind of creature whose defense was so strong that it made one's hair stand on end. As for trapping the enemy, that was only its derivative ability. But even its derivative ability was strong enough to trap 14 Divine Realm Giants. Just thinking about it made one feel despair. Fortunately, Chaotic Divine Beast Bloodline is not good at attacking. It's just like how Chaotic Holy Man trapped the 14 Saint Realm Giants. Although the 14 Saint Realm Giants could not escape, he could not do anything to them. Otherwise, Chaotic Holy Man would have become even more terrifying. The Firmament Master paused for a moment. However, if he can break through to the 3rd level of the Divine Realm and shatter the vacuum, his lack of attack power will be compensated. At that time, his defense will be invincible and his attack will be a threat to experts of the same level. I'm afraid that even the Tai Emperor and Divine Lord Ancient Desolation will not be his match. Xing Hui nodded and did not continue. The Chaos Holy Man, who was ranked in the top 3 of the 10 Supreme Experts, was still some distance away from him. Even though the Soaring Cloud Sword sect was annihilated by the Divine Path sect all those years ago, it still left behind a lot of forces. After a period of development, it has a few earthly phenomenon experts and a few dozen almighty figures. In terms of almighty battle prowess, it isn't inferior to the forces of the One Hall, the 3 sects, the 6 schools, and the 9 clans, so it can't be underestimated. Moreover, the Shifeng mountain range is located between our Skydome sect and the Rainbow Sword sect. Following the rise of the Soaring Cloud Sword sect and the entry of the Sword Shadow sect, our 3 great forces will be completely united as one. From then on, we'll help each other. The 3 forces will be united? Sing Hui breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this. It seemed that the Firmament Master did not have to worry about the danger of collapse for a short period of time. This way, he would have time to study sword moves and do his best to have the power to fight against divine beasts. The Divine Ghost sect has temporarily retreated after our 3 forces are united. However, the reason why I called you here has something to do with the Divine Ghost sect. Esteemed Master, please speak. As far as I know, the previous leader of the Divine Ghost sect, Wang Qiqing, has already reached the peak of the astronomical and earthly level. Wang Qiqing coincidentally excavated an ancient cave residence and obtained a 16th level divine weapon from the ancient cave residence. His battle power is incredible. If he can step into the divine realm, his battle power will immediately surpass the initial stage of the divine realm and reach a level that is not inferior to the suffering true God and the others. Therefore, the Divine Ghost sect will definitely find a way to exchange for some innate charm from the divine wilderness to help Wang Qiqing. Esteemed Master, you mean, I hope that you can sneak into the Divine Ghost sect and steal this innate charm. The Firmament Master said seriously, during this period of time, I have already understood your methods. In terms of speed, almost no one in the divine realm can compete with you. In addition, your battle power is incredible and you are a stranger, so the Divine Ghost sect will not suspect you at all. You are the best person to steal this innate charm. If we can get this innate charm, even if we cannot cure Zhu Zhao, we can at least stabilize his injuries and prevent them from worsening. Speaking of this, he paused for a moment. However, this trip will be very dangerous. You have a bright future ahead of you, so logically speaking, we should not let you go. However, we really do not want to let go of this opportunity, so if you refuse, we will not force you. Sing Hui asked without hesitation. You agree? That's right. I am greatly indebted to Master Zhu Zhao. Since I can help him, I will not refuse. Good. The Firmament Master replied with a heavy voice. His eyes flashed. We did not misjudge you. Go to the Rainbow Sword sect to comprehend the Rainbow Sword intent first. We will arrange a flawless identity for you. When everything is arranged, we will inform you and let you sneak into the Divine Ghost sect. Chapter 609. Baihong Sword Sect. The alliance with Heaven's Vault had not only improved the situation in Heaven's Vault, but also reduced the pressure on Baihong Sword Sect. Although the Divine Path sect had the support of Heaven's Way, and the 2 factions had as many as 12 saint experts, Baihong Sword Sect, Heaven's Vault, and Sword Shadow were by no means weak. If the alliance formed by these 3 factions really went to war with Heaven's Way, even if Heaven's Way and Divine Path sect could win, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. Perhaps the Divine Wilderness and Eternity would be happy to see such an outcome, but it was not in line with Heaven's Way's plan to unify the Divine Wilderness. Under such circumstances, to avoid forcing Heaven's Vault, Baihong Sword Sect, and Sword Shadow to launch a full-scale counterattack, temporarily withdrawing their forces was the best choice. At this moment, in the core area of Baihong Sword Sect, Sword Master Baihong was personally overseeing it. Outside, there were several sword saints protecting the surroundings, completely sealing off the entire mountain peak. In the stone room where Baihong Sword was stored, there were still powerful ripples of sword intent spreading from the mountain peak even though there was a barrier. Even the sword saints on the periphery were affected to some extent. A month's time is up, right? Among the 6 sword saints on the periphery, the Black Turtle Sword Saint, who had the cultivation of lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, asked. However, Sword Master Baihong, who was at the center of the formation, glanced at the Black Turtle Sword Saint indifferently. Although we agreed to let Sword Master Pak Hui use Baihong Sword for a month, as long as Sword Master Pak Hui hasn't finished cultivating, we shouldn't disturb him. Otherwise, if we interrupt him at a crucial moment in comprehending sword force, Who can bear the responsibility? The Black Turtle Sword Saint smiled embarrassedly. I'm just saying. Sword Master Pak Hui is the fourth Sword Master of Baihong Sword Sect. Even if he uses Baihong Sword to cultivate for 2 months, it's reasonable. The other Sword Saints also nodded in agreement. The Rainbow Sword Sect was different from the Sky Dome Sect. There might be some outsiders in the core circle of the Sky Dome Sect, but those who could become Sword Saints in the Rainbow Sword Sect were all loyal and devoted to the sect. There was no need to worry about trust. Thus, these Sword Saints had already secretly understood the miraculous and powerful nature of the Pak Hui Sword Master. No one wanted to leave a bad impression on the legendary Sword Master who had unlimited potential and was likely to become one of the top 10 most powerful people in the future. Fortunately, the Rainbow Sword's owner wanted to do Tsing Hui a favor, but Tsing Hui did not want to appear too special. When night was about to fall, the majestic sword intent emitted from the Rainbow Sword gradually dissipated, and it fell silent again. After waiting for less than an hour, Tsing Hui, whose mental state had greatly changed compared to before, slowly walked out of the stone room. Sword Master Pak Hui. Thank you, Sword Master Chang Hong, for protecting me. Tsing Hui bowed slightly to the Sword Master Chang Hong. You're too polite, Pak Hui Sword Master. I'm sure you have many comprehensions that need to be digested, so we've already arranged a cultivation room for you. The Sword Master Chang Hong gestured towards a courtyard on a nearby mountain peak. Tsing Hui nodded. Without saying anything else, he leapt up and flew towards the mountain peak. A disciple led him to the courtyard where he cultivated in seclusion. As Tsing Hui left, the Sword Master Chang Hong and the 6 Sword Saints immediately acted together. They activated the formations on the mountain peak where the Rainbow Sword was located, sealing everything inside, including the flow of energy. This reduced the energy activity inside to a minimum. The Rainbow Sword Sect was able to maintain the power of the Rainbow Sword's sword intent to this day through these layers of formations and the constant nourishment of the sword intent of several Sword Saints. Otherwise, with the speed at which the sword intent was dissipating, the spirituality of any divine weapon would have completely disappeared after tens of thousands of years, unless it was a chaotic artifact that was superior to divine weapons. The Rainbow Sword intent is indeed extraordinary. Not only did I benefit greatly from it, even the Deep Scarlet sword intent seemed to have been stimulated and grew a little. If I wasn't sure if the Deep Scarlet Sword could reach level 13 after gaining spirituality, I no longer have any doubts now. In the cultivation room, Tsing Hui wore a faint smile on his face. After a month's time, under the tempering of the Rainbow Sword, his spiritual force level had reached a shocking level 132, and he had completely stepped into the level where he could condense sword force. At the same time, after this period of consolidation, he finally had his own conclusion about sword force. Although he was still a little short of condensing sword force, he finally had a direction for his sword force. Others' forces are based on the power of heaven and earth. Mine is based on pure sword intent and will. If I really want to use the power of heaven and earth to condense sword force, my sword intent will definitely not be pure. In that case, if I want to condense sword force, the only way is to use my sword intent to replace other people's sword intent. Or rather, use my sword intent to replace other people's sword intent. Once the sword intent is out, all laws will submit. This was his force. The force that all laws will submit. The force that only I am supreme. And in order to achieve this, a spiritual level of 132 was obviously not enough. At present, the power of his sword intent derived from the Eastern Sun Sword technique was also not enough. All laws submit, only I am supreme. It seems that condensing sword force will be more difficult than refining the body and perfecting the Sword of the Sun dazzling sword. Currently, the situation in Infinite Wasteland domain is unstable. Although the Sky Vault sect, the Sword Shadow sect, and the Rainbow Sword sect have combined to form a colossal force, once the Heavenly Tao, the Divine Wilderness, and the Eternal Sword sect begin to clear out, it will still be difficult to resist the surging tide of these 3 top forces. Therefore, for me, the most important thing is to increase my own strength. Then I can only work on refining the body and perfecting the sword of the sun-dazzling sword. Tsing Hui muttered to himself. In fact, in terms of sword force, if he could raise his sword talent to level 10, he would have the characteristic of suppressing other sword cultivators, forming an effect similar to the submission of all laws. Unfortunately, the divine technique, the deduction technique, and even the power of comprehension were the focus of his improvement, and if he added his sword talent, his chaotic level was far from enough. Unless he was willing to raise his chaotic level to level 60 and above, causing the Chaos Treasure Pavilion to transform again. Body, the sword of the sun-dazzling sword, sword force. Among the three, increasing my body is the easiest. I have already cultivated the 9 changes of the real dragon to the great perfection realm. As long as I obtain the cultivation technique of the real dragon realm, I will be able to break through to the real dragon realm in 1 or 2 months. However, this method requires luck. Apart from my body, there is the sword of the sun-dazzling sword. Sword force completely depended on luck. Tsing Hui was silent for a moment, sorting out the current situation he was facing, and finally decided to solve the problem of the suffering true god. And to solve the suffering true god's spirit sealing mystic technique on the hidden sword venerable, it was inevitable that he would have to infiltrate the Black Flame sect. In this way, he would have to cultivate the shadowless stance immortal technique well. After half a year of accumulation, the amount of Taoist rhymes in the Fortune Sacred Jade had increased. Originally, he had planned to keep these Taoist rhymes and activate the Fortune Sacred Jade once after accumulating to 1,000 Taoist rhymes. Then, he would be able to complete his cultivation in one go. However, the situation had changed and he had to use it slightly. Thinking of this, Tsing Hui no longer hesitated. With the help of the creation divine jade, he quickly comprehended the shadowless stance immortal technique. The difficulty of comprehending the shadowless stance immortal technique was far from being comparable to the shadowless stance immortal technique. In less than 100 Dao auras, Tsing Hui had already comprehended the shadowless stance immortal technique to the great achievement realm. Although the shadowless stance immortal technique to the great achievement realm did not allow him to jump out of the 3 realms and not be in the 5 elements, it was enough to cover his aura completely. It even created a strange effect on his body. Even if there were people standing in front of him, they would unconsciously ignore his existence even though they could see him. Such a mysterious, shadowless stance immortal technique had already exceeded the imagination of cultivators of the divine beast bloodline system. With this shadowless stance immortal technique, it's enough for me to infiltrate the Black Flame sect. Tsing Hui revealed a smile on his face. In the next moment, he had already left the courtyard where he was cultivating in seclusion. He summoned the disciple outside the courtyard and said, "Tell Sword Master Chang Hong that I have to go out for a while. I won't be bidding farewell to Sword Master Chang Hong." "Yes, my lord." The disciple respectfully replied and left. Tsing Hui immediately leaped onto his sword and quickly shot out of the Rainbow Sword sect. After leaving the Rainbow Sword sect, he immediately used the shadowless stance immortal technique and disappeared into the horizon like a white streak of light. Almost at the same time Tsing Hui left the Rainbow Sword sect, Sword Master Chang Hong appeared outside the Rainbow Sword sect with him. She originally wanted to ask Tsing Hui why he left the Rainbow Sword sect, but when Tsing Hui used the shadowless stance immortal technique, her thoughts suddenly changed. Pak Hui is the 4th sword master of the Rainbow Sword sect. If she wants to go back and forth to the Rainbow Sword sect, she naturally doesn't need to report to me. As a sword master of the Rainbow Sword sect, we should give her enough freedom so that she won't be restricted in the Rainbow Sword sect and willingly stay in the Rainbow Sword sect for a long time. Thinking of this, she turned around and returned. The Black Flame cult was not far away from the Rainbow Sword sect. Strictly speaking, it was less than 100,000 kilometers away. Tsing Hui didn't fly on his sword at full speed as he wanted to make a huge commotion. However, it still took him less than a day to step into the Black Flame cult's territory. Compared to the Rainbow Sword sect's loose management of the forces under their jurisdiction, the Black Flame cult's territory was ruled by divine authority. Almost all of the people living in the Black Flame cult's territory were followers of the Black Flame cult. The only difference was the degree of belief. In such a situation, Tsing Hui naturally didn't dare to stay in the Black Flame cult's territory. He maintained his vigilance and traveled for half a day. A group of black palaces built in a huge white mountain range appeared before his eyes. The entire group of palaces was completely black, reflecting the brilliance of the huge white mountain range. There were round towers in the palaces. The top of the towers wasn't in the shape of a sharp cone. Instead, it was burning with a cluster of black flames. It was filled with a deep, dark and mysterious feeling. Is this the Black Flame cult? Calamity, real God, let me see where you're hiding. As Tsing Hui spoke, he activated his aura observation skill. Suddenly, countless auras in the entire Black Flame cult soared into the sky and appeared clearly before Tsing Hui's eyes. Among them, there were 3 auras that were like huge pillars of air that occupied a large area. At the same time, they reached the clouds. They were vast and mighty, completely suppressing the weaker auras around them. However, other than these auras, Tsing Hui could also see countless mechanical auras that were connected together. They surrounded and protected the huge group of palaces. Although the auras that were connected together were rather stiff, they were vast and mighty. As soon as they exploded, the power was enough to suppress a few divine beings at once. These obviously stiff auras are the operating tracks of the Black Flame cult's mountain protection formation. It's a pity that I don't know anything about formations. Otherwise, I could have used the aura observation skill to break the mountain protection formation of the Black Flame cult directly. However, although I can't break the mountain protection formation of the Black Flame cult, I can still find some aura nodes. These nodes are the best choice for sneaking in or taking refuge. Tsing Hui looked calm as he headed directly to a node that was guarded by an almighty. Chapter 610. There were many experts in Black Flame sect. There were 3 of them who were at the divine level. There were also many almighties who were at the divine level and celestial and earthly level. As the protective mountain formation was the core of Black Flame sect, there would naturally be almighties guarding the nodes of energy flow secretly. On top of that, there were many palaces that were made of dust cleansing stones in Black Flame sect. They were good defense against the incarnation skill and teleportation skill. It was a pity, then, they met Tsing Hui. Tsing Hui, who was using the shadowless celestial skill, seemed to have become one with the power of the protective mountain formation of Black Flame sect. Unless someone saw him with their own eyes, no one would be able to sense his location based on his aura. However, no matter how cautious and conscientious that great being was, it was impossible for him to keep an eye on the energy nodes of the protective formation at all times. There would be times when he would let his guard down. Ching Su hid for less than an hour. While the great being received a message and was reading it, he passed through the formation with a flash and snuck into the Black Flame cult. The Almighty noticed when he flashed. However, the shadowless celestial skill that had reached the Great Achievement realm seemed to have touched some kind of mysterious rule. It possessed a mysterious power that could change one's subconscious thoughts. Although the Almighty noticed, his mind was filled with thoughts of denial in the next second. As such, he didn't investigate further. True God of suffering, he really hid himself well. His aura seems to be weaker than the other 2 Saint Stage giants. Wait, could it be that he still hasn't recovered after burning the origin of his domain half a year ago? As Tsing Hui sneaked in the direction of Real God Suffering, he observed Real God Suffering's aura and he looked surprised. On one hand, he was shocked by the difficulty of recovering the origin of realm. On the other hand, he had a bad feeling. If the injuries of Suffering True God's domain origin had not fully recovered, then what he should be doing now was to go into seclusion to recover. In actual fact, when Tsing Hui sneaked to a mountain peak not far away from Real God Suffering, he had to admit that he had come at the wrong time. The mountain peak where Real God Suffering's aura was completely sealed off by a formation. Although Tsing Hui could see the flow of the formation's aura, a fully activated sealing formation and a half-activated protective mountain formation were 2 different things. On top of that, he wasn't proficient in formation doctrine. Hence, he couldn't do anything about the formation. If he wanted to enter it, he could only break it by force. However, this was the Black Flame sect's headquarters. If he were to forcefully tear apart the formation in the Black Flame sect's headquarters, he would definitely be besieged by 3 Saint Stage powerhouses. Even if he was much stronger than before, he would definitely not be able to do so. If he were to hide inside, I wouldn't be able to do anything to him. However, since I'm here, I naturally can't return empty-handed. Black Flame sect is one of the 6 sects after all. Even if the top treasures in the sect are kept in the Saints and Almighty's personal space, there are still quite a number of items that are of a lower grade. I shall take them away and sell them. I can enrich Hunyuan Trade Union. Tsing Hui turned his gaze and headed to the treasury of Black Flame sect. The treasury of Black Flame sect was also protected by a formation. There was even an almighty guarding outside the treasury personally. However, as there would be people entering and exiting the treasury from time to time, the formation naturally wouldn't be the same as the one in real God-Suffering's seclusion place. It was impregnable. Tsing Hui waited outside for less than 2 days. Then, there was a disciple who looked young and had cultivated to the Gold Core realm. He held the Master's token and stepped into the treasury. Taking advantage of the opening of the treasury and the loosening of the formation, Tsing Hui entered the treasury in a flash. There aren't any top treasures in the treasury of Black Flame sect. However, there are quite a number of treasures for Real Origin realm, Transformative realm, Never-Ending realm and Gold Core realm. Although the magical weapons aren't of a high grade, they are around the 9th or 10th grade. However, there are a lot of them. There are also many materials and treasures. Although they aren't the top treasures, there are a lot of them. Tsing Hui glanced at the treasury. Then, in a flash, he appeared on top of the elite disciple. Before he could react, he knocked him out and kept him in his personal space. After dealing with this Golden Elixir realm disciple, his figure quickly shuttled back and forth in the treasury. Almost everywhere he went, the divine weapons, natural treasures, spirit beast soul essences, and so on were all kept in his personal space. In less than half an hour, the entire treasury had been cleaned out by him. After collecting everything in the treasury, Tsing Hui no longer relied on the Gold Core realm disciple to lead the way. Instead, he headed out of the treasury. Outside the treasury, the Almighty from Black Flame sect lifted his eyelids lazily when he heard the footsteps. I've chosen the items and I'm here to record it. Who are you? Tsing Hui stepped out of the treasury. Without saying anything, he soared into the sky at the fastest speed possible. Along with a deafening sonic boom, he whizzed into the sky. As he soared into the sky, his sword essence burned and light pursuit was activated. His speed reached an unprecedented level. In a breath's time, he covered a distance of hundreds of kilometers. Along with the deafening sonic boom in the sky, countless cultivators in Black Flame sect lifted their heads in shock. Meanwhile, the great figure outside the treasure vault was suddenly jolted awake, and he shouted with a grim voice, "Men, stop him!" At the same time, he dashed into the treasury at the fastest speed possible. When he saw the empty treasury, his eyes were bloodshot. "How dare you? How dare you sneak into our Black Flame sect and steal? Quick, raise the protective mountain formation and stop him. Stop him!" The Almighty shouted loudly. His voice echoed throughout the Black Flame sect. Following the Almighty's shout, many powerful cultivators in the Black Flame sect were awakened. The entire Black Flame sect was mobilized. Powerful auras soared into the sky. Mixed with rage, they circulated in the sky above the Black Flame sect. Where did this thief come from? How dare you behave so atrociously in our Black Flame sect? How dare you steal from our Black Flame sect? How dare you? How dare you? Surrender now. Powerful auras, accompanied by powerful attacks, swept across the sky above the Black Flame sect. However, Tsing Hui, who had activated Light Pursuit, was extremely fast. The Almighties in the Black Flame sect, including those with Astronomical Phenomenon and Earth Cultivation, had been left far behind by Tsing Hui before their attacks could even reach him. In a few breaths' time, there were close to 10 Almighties who had attacked. However, none of them managed to touch the corner of his clothes. Instead, the speed that he displayed caused these almighties who had missed their attacks to be extremely shocked. What a fast speed. This can't be a divine great leader at the profound void stage, right? Impossible. A divine great leader at the profound void stage has already integrated himself into the law of space. With the help of the law of space, it's impossible for him to create such shocking movements when he's flying. This thief must have mastered an extremely fast divine great leader. Damn it. I can't stop him. The speed of my divine great leader's blazing soul flame isn't even as fast as his flying speed. These almighties who had attacked were both shocked and furious. At the same time, they felt a sense of grievance and helplessness from the bottom of their hearts. Fortunately, this feeling of grievance did not last for long. As a vast and mighty territory energy swept across the area, a light screen that covered a radius of over 1,000 kilometers gradually formed and gradually dissipated. The true savior. The true savior has made his move. Good, the Great God Protection Formation has already been activated. Once the formation is fully activated, even a divine great leader won't be able to break it in a short period of time. How dare you come to our Black Flame sect and behave so atrociously? Even if you're a true divine great leader, I'll definitely make sure you won't be able to return alive, let alone a mere divine great leader who has cultivated speed divine great leader. The almighties who had been helpless against Xing Hui who was flying at high speed were all relieved. Looking at the vast and mighty territory that was sweeping toward Xing Hui, they all smiled as if they were waiting for a good show. Unfortunately, this smile lasted for a moment before it was frozen by a sword ray that illuminated the world. Sunburst. Accompanied by a soft chant, it was as if a scorching sun was slowly rising in the void. It suddenly exploded, and endless light and heat spread out from the scorching sun. It continuously compressed the surrounding air, forming a shockwave that could be seen with the naked eye that swept across the area. Sword of Sunburst. Xing Hui's most powerful sword of Sunburst. Furthermore, although this sword was used to tear apart the true savior's territory, its main purpose was to destroy the surrounding area. Don't forget that he was now in the Black Flame sect. If the power of this sword were to spread out and destroy the surrounding area, the damage it would cause would definitely be catastrophic. No one knew how many Black Flame sect disciples would die because of this sword. This was the method of besieging the way to rescue the Zhao. The shockwave and vitality clashed violently, forming a large amount of electromagnetism and light beams. The true God of Salvation was forced to use his territory power to negate the power contained in the sword. However, even so, many buildings within a few kilometers of the center were destroyed. Hundreds and thousands of Black Flame sect members screamed in agony and turned into ashes from the aftershock of the sword. How dare you! A furious bellow rang out right after the true God of Salvation's domain was shifted. With the voice, the power of another domain had already risen up, enveloping Qing Su. Another one? I wonder if the suffering true God has been lured out by me? However, 3 divine beings. This is beyond the limit of what I can fight against. Xing Hui's mind was filled with thoughts. However, the deep scarlet sword in his hand was not slow at all. At the moment when the territory of the 3rd divine being from the Black Flame sect swept over, the dazzling sword light exploded again and tore apart the territory of the only true God that was covering his body. After tearing apart the territory of the only true God, Xing Hui no longer entangled himself with this divine realm expert. He became one with his sword and whizzed toward the energy node of the divine protection formation that had yet to be fully activated. An almighty who was overseeing this place roared angrily and unleashed his divine power to stop him. However, what awaited him was Xing Hui's dazzling sword. I can't block it. Along with a terrified scream, the Almighty's divine power melted like snow under the attack of the Sword of the Sun. It instantly collapsed. The terrifying heat that rolled over forced him to retreat in fear. However, even so, the sword light from the Sword of the Sun that swept over still hit his body. There were a few holes in his body and he flew out with blood all over his body. Moreover, Xing Hui only needed to move forward with his sword and he would be able to kill this almighty completely. However, the divine protection formation of the Black Flame sect was about to be fully activated and the two divine beings were chasing after him. He could not delay any longer. He could only give up on this almighty and whizzed out of the formation. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the vast sea of clouds. Chapter 611. Bastard. The angry roar gradually stopped as the Black Flame sect's great divine blessing array was sealed. Even though it was only a few breaths later, two majestic forces had penetrated the great divine blessing array and appeared outside the array again. They swept out like a raging wave of territory energy. However, the sword light that Xing Hui had turned into was already far away from the Black Flame sect. It had rushed out of the Black Flame sect's sealing area. Damn it! The one true God appeared next to the world's savior true God. His face, which was filled with holiness and honor in the eyes of his believers, was gloomy. A divine tier cultivator had infiltrated the Black Flame sect and robbed the sect's treasury clean. The two divine tier experts had even tried to stop the thief at the same time. However, the thief still managed to escape. This was simply trampling on the entire Black Flame sect's reputation. If this matter were to spread, the entire Black Flame sect would be utterly disgraced. Seal off the news immediately. We can't let this matter leak out. The world's savior true God ordered coldly. Behind him, the Purification sect leader and the guardian kings of the Black Flame sect looked troubled. I'm afraid there's a problem. Almost everyone in the sect knows about the scene where many almighties and two true gods attacked. I'm afraid it's hard to hide this matter. That's your problem. You allowed the thief to sneak into the Black Flame sect and rob everything in the sect's treasury. Is this the arrangement of the entire Black Flame sect? Luckily, we weren't in seclusion during this period of time. If we were in seclusion and the enemy sneaked into our cultivation room and killed us, would you still be oblivious? The world's savior true God said sternly. The Purification sect leader trembled slightly and could only say hurriedly, "Don't worry, true God. I'll do my best to minimize the impact of this matter." We can't let go of the investigation of the thief, the one true God said calmly. The one true God at the side said indifferently, "This kid has grasped a divine ability that is proficient in speed. He also has a sword art that is shockingly powerful. With such a pure speed divine ability and shocking sword art, he definitely isn't a nobody. I want you guys to quickly investigate the clues and send them to me." This true God. The hierarch of purification bowed respectfully again. The one true God nodded and said no more. With a flash, he disappeared from the God protection array. The savior true God glanced in the direction that Xing Hui had left with a chilling look in his eyes. "Don't let me find you. Otherwise, I'll let you know the price you have to pay for offending the Black Flame Order." After saying that, he turned around and entered the God Bless Great Formation. Xing Hui naturally didn't know that his actions had already caused a divine stage giant of the Black Flame sect to hate him to the bone. If he knew, he might even think of luring this divine stage giant out and ambushing him. It was not easy to kill a Saint Stage powerhouse, and if they failed, they would never have a day of peace. All the forces related to the Saint Stage powerhouse would suffer the crazy revenge of the Saint Stage powerhouse. However, if they succeeded, the benefits of the Saint Stage powerhouse would be at least 1,000 Taoist rhymes. Swish. To prevent the Black Flame Order from catching up with him, Xing Hui purposely took a big detour. At the same time, he sent a part of his consciousness into the Chaos Shrine and found Su Tong and Blazing Glory, who were guarding the Chaos Shrine's Primordial Trade Union. "I've just obtained a batch of items. This is the list of items. You can prepare to sell them one by one. If we need them internally, we can give them a discount. In short, sell these items as soon as possible and exchange them for Taoist items." As he spoke, Xing Hui had already sent a message to Su Tong and Blazing Glory. After receiving the message from Xing Hui, the two of them quickly browsed through it. In just a short while, they had already estimated the value of the items. Their eyes lit up. "President, there are a lot of items here. Although the price of each item isn't high, if we sell them at a reasonable price, We'll definitely make a profit of 400 Taoist rhymes. If you're willing to provide delivery service, the price of these items will be even higher. Delivery service? Sing Hui pondered for a while and shook his head. I'm currently busy with some matters. I don't have the time for that. You can sell them first. Yes, President. We'll arrange it right away. These items are the most popular items. It's very convenient to sell them. No matter how much you can provide, they'll be sold out within 10 days. Blazing Glory said with a smile. I've only obtained these items by chance. I might not be able to get much. As Tsing Hui said this, he seemed to have thought of something. Wait a minute. I might be able to get some more. He thought of the God Ghost sect. He couldn't do anything to a Saint Realm cultivator, but as long as he was fast enough, he might be able to capture a celestial phenomenon cultivator alive. Perhaps, once he made a move, he would be surrounded by several Saint Realm cultivators from the Divine Ghost sect. However, if he could have people from the Sky Dome sect, the Rainbow Sword sect, and the Sword Shadow sect to help him, this matter wouldn't be too dangerous. Go and advertise. However, the transaction will take place half a month later. Tsing Hui said. Yes. The Primordial Trade Union was basically serving Tsing Hui. Su Tong and Blazing Glory naturally carried out Tsing Hui's orders. After leaving the Primordial Trade Union, Tsing Hui took a detour and flew towards Rainbow Sword sect. At the same time, he came to the Sky Vault sect and found Master Firmament. Seeing Qing Su's arrival, a sliver of joy appeared on Master Sky's face. By Su, you've come. I just happened to have something to talk to you about. I've already arranged your identity. You'll be a disciple of the Divine Ghost sect's God-bearing peak. This is a mountain that the Divine Ghost sect specially provides for the upper echelons of the sect to cultivate in seclusion. The defensive formation on it is extremely powerful, and once it's activated, it only needs 2 great existences to defend it, and they'll be able to block the attacks of 3 saints for an entire day and night. As a result, you need to head to the Divine Ghost sect as soon as possible and enter the God-bearing peak. Otherwise, once the formation is activated, no one will be able to enter it unless Wang Qiqing comes out of seclusion. Tsing Hui nodded. I'll go right away. I've invited a Voidwalker from Sword Shadow. In addition, Sword Master Bai Heng will return to our Sky Vault sect soon. Once you succeed, we'll immediately attack the God Ghost sect and break in to rescue you. However, even if we invite a Voidwalker to bring us to the God Ghost sect with his 10th order personal space, it'll still take us 10 to 15 breaths of time to break in. During this time, I hope you can exert your speed to the best of your ability and stall for as much time as possible until we arrive. At this point, Master Firmament paused for a moment before continuing. As for the Divine Ghost sect's mountain guarding formation, you don't have to worry about it. I have spies lying in ambush in the Divine Ghost sect. They can destroy a few nodes of the mountain guarding formation at a critical moment and delay it for about 20 breaths of time. In other words, 10 to 15 breaths of time is enough? Tsing Hui nodded. The God Ghost sect's strength was actually on par with the Black Flame sect, and was slightly weaker than the Rainbow Sword sect. It was only because they had the Divine Wilderness behind them that they were rather active. Tsing Hui believed that if he did not directly clash with the saints of the God Ghost sect, it would not be a problem for him to last 10 breaths of time. If Firmament Master and Sword Master Bai Heng arrived, and the 3 sages of the Divine Ghost sect dared to chase them out of the Divine Ghost sect's territory, he wouldn't mind killing them with Sword Master Bai Heng, Firmament Master, and the others. That's right. As long as you can last for 15 breaths of time, we'll definitely be able to bring you back. All right, I can go at any time. Tsing Hui nodded seriously. Although it would be impossible for him to go to the Divine Ghost sect's treasury with his identity, if he could capture Wang Qiqing, the previous Divine Ghost sect's sect master, the benefits he could obtain could not be underestimated. If we do this, won't the God Ghost sect start an all-out war? Tsing Hui asked. If it was before, the God Ghost sect would naturally kick us when we're down, but now our Firmament, Rainbow Sword sect, and Sword Shadow have joined together. A mere God Ghost sect definitely does not have the courage. Even if they have the Divine Wilderness behind them, As long as the divine wilderness does not want to replace the heavenly Tao and make our firmament their opponent, they will definitely swallow their anger. Then, if I go a little overboard, it shouldn't be too big of a problem, right? You can do whatever you want. The firmament master waved his hand, giving Tsing Hui the greatest authority to act. Finally, he cautiously said, "Remember, everything has to be done to protect your own life. Your future is limitless, so you can't be so easily buried in a small god-ghost sect. If you really encounter danger that you can't disintegrate, use the teleportation technique to escape. Although the dust-repelling stone in the god-ghost sect has some interference with the teleportation technique, the interference is not great. At most, it will cause the teleportation location to be wrong, but it won't lead to the danger of entering a spatial mezzanine. If you use the teleportation technique to leave, as long as your luck isn't too bad and you don't end up in the nest of another peak force, there's no need to worry about any special danger." "I understand. Leave it to me. I'll head to the God Ghost sect now. And when you reach the territory of the God Ghost sect, go to Wahal Mountain first. I'll have our spy in the God Ghost sect wait for you there. When the time comes, just follow his arrangements. He'll take care of the matter of you entering the God Ghost sect." "All right." Tsing Hui nodded. At the same time, his original body, which was flying towards the Rainbow Sword sect, changed direction and flew towards the God Ghost sect. Remember, ensuring your own safety is the most important thing. If there's really no chance, or if you're in danger, just don't do anything. No one in the Firmament Master will blame you. The Firmament Master said solemnly. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that there was no suitable candidate, he, Zhongjin Master, Yuanri Master, and the others wouldn't have agreed to let Tsing Hui take the risk. But Zhu Zhao Master was gradually unable to hold on, and the Chaos Treasure Pavilion didn't produce any innate divine charm. At present, the only way to get it was from the God Ghost sect. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.